And a pleasant good afternoon to all those out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. That guy right there is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. And it's Friday, which means it's a Friday free-for-all mailbag, best day of the week. And I haven't been here in 2 weeks. And so I'm pretty fired up. I missed last week, but I'm here for this week. And I also want to say, I was watching at home yesterday as I was a little under the weather, and I appreciate everybody's thoughts, wishing me to be better, and I appreciate that very much. So back and better than ever, ready to go, right as rain, ready for a Friday free-for-all mailbag. I'm pumped. And Brian, we have a question right off the bat, and I think that fits today. Q-Kibbs 97, Driscoll Claus. What sort of goodies do you have for me in the mailbag today? A Porsche, maybe? I have been very good boy, cheering on the Irish this year and following IB content. So what do you have for him, Driscoll Claus? Does that mean I'm like your elf?
So first of all, I hate the Driscoll Claus thing because some guy that I know who I despise, some clown that now covers another team that I despise, called me that once, and I did think it was funny. I'm not mad at you, but it just brings up bad memories. But to your point, Vince, when you and I started this podcast, and when I launched Irish Breakdown, my first objective, as you very well know, was Vince, you're going to come with me. Soon as you can, you're going to come with me. Made that happen.
Yep.
Then we launched this podcast. We've done all these things. I have been working around the clock for 2.5 years building the sucker up, right? Yep. And the promise that I made to people when we started this, and we started doing the super chats, and we started asking people to give us their hard-earned money was, listen, this money isn't so that I can, send my wife and I on the coolest vacations all the time, right? I like to get there someday. Right. It was, you support us, we're going to grow, we're going to build. And we had a really good, so far, we're not even done yet, but we've had a really, really good 2021. And the support we've received from people from super chats, from just watching, which again, if you can't give super chats and you just watch, you're helping us grow. You're helping us grow financially. You're helping Irish Breakdown be stronger. If you're just listening via podcast, no, you're not giving super chats, but you're helping us grow. You're helping us financially. If you're a member of the message board, you're clearly helping. We've had over 30 people sign up to be Booster Club members. So we have grown a ton. And then, of course, our website has grown quite a bit, like by 5 figures in financial amount from where we were a year ago. And what I promised is if you all support us, I will put it back into Irish Breakdown. And so because of the success we've had, I am going to start a search. I've actually already started it. I've talked to a couple people, but we are going to hire a new full-time recruiting reporter and a beat reporter starting in 2022. My goal is to have the recruiting reporter in place on January 1. That's my goal. If we can do it sooner, great. If it takes a little while longer to get the right person, that's going to happen too.
That's so important.
This is going to be a full-time deal, and I'm very excited about it. And go from basically just kind of me, and we've had some people help out that have stepped up and helped out a ton. Andrew McDonough, who wrote the article yesterday about Navy and the rivalry, the forged in blood, volunteered to work for free. Now, you know me, Vince, I can't let anybody work for free. I take care of him, but he doesn't want anything. He just wants to help. There's been so many people that have helped us along the way to the point where now we are in a position where we can start expanding. And I'm excited about it because there are things lacking from a content standpoint from Irish Breakdown. There are things that we don't do. We don't have daily recruiting coverage. That needs to change. That's going to change. That then keeps me from doing some of the things that I want to do and some of the aspects of the business that I want to continue to grow. So being able to add a couple people here over the next 6 to 8 months is really exciting. And it's only possible because of y'all. And that's the thing is I promised if you help us grow, we are going to reinvest in it to make sure that our product is even better. For you. And so I can't thank you all enough. I'm excited about this. This is going to be great. It's going to be a bumpy road because, obviously you've got to find the right person, but it's going to be worth it. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to put some things out here this next week and officially just out there for job boards, different things like that. But if anybody has any ideas of who they think I should pursue outside of the Notre Dame beat, if there's somebody out there, if you know someone that wants to get into this, just hit me up a private message, right? I'm looking for someone that's going to work their butts off. I'm looking for someone who is going to
self-motivated.
Yeah, and really get after it. Someone with that can relate to people, and I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it, and it's
and location is not. You don't have to live in South Bend.
Matter of fact, it's actually an advantage if you don't in a lot of ways.
Right.
So yeah. But hey, and I've seen people down here. I'm stoked for y'all, and hey, look. Don't be stoked for me, right? Be stoked for all of us, because this is going to make the Irish Breakdown community and the content so much better. And, that is something that's lacking. And it's part of – and this isn't it. Like, eventually I want to hire 2 recruiting people, maybe even 3. I want to hire somebody to cover, basketball and all those other sports. So this is just the beginning, y'all. I mean, that's the thing is this is just I didn't start Irish Breakdown so like I could do all this work and then, Vince can help out with the video thing. And no, this was always meant to grow, and we're growing, and I'm excited about it. And it's because of y'all. So I wanted to get that out of the way. That's kind of my little nuggets for you there, Q Kibbs. I put this on the message board a few days ago at Irish Breakdown. Yeah. And so, I have had people. This question was asked in our chat, and this question was asked of me to a couple people that I've said, "Hey, give me some feelers." There is no requirement in regards to male, female, locate. I mean, I'm looking for the right person. I'm looking for someone who's going to dominate that job, and actually, certain parts of the country, if you don't live around here, it's actually going to be better because there's more prospects by where those people live. So
not a ton of Northern
I'm
Indiana.
looking for somebody who's going to dominate. And notice I didn't say I'm looking for a dude. You know what I mean? None of that. I'm looking for someone who's going to dominate, and someone who's going to work their butts off, and someone who's going to be coachable. Those are the things I'm looking for. So that's where I'm at. So
love it.
And that's where we're at. So I'm super excited now. I know people didn't come here for that, though.
No, they came for questions.
They came here for questions.
And Q Kibbs has a question, so I'm going to throw it out to you.
Okay.
He says, obviously, we aren't in practice, but what have you heard on Diggs, what Diggs shows in practice over Estime?
Well, it's essentially about why he graded out higher on the Irish Breakdown board coming out of high school. I mean, I had Logan Diggs ranked ahead of Audric Estime. And I know that he was ranked higher as a recruit. And I love Audric Estime. I can't wait to see what he can do.
Right.
But Logan always had superior feet and vision. That's the thing. And that's what people miss. Because I think sometimes in the recruiting business, we get so wrapped up in certain measurables that you have to have. It's like you have to have explosive speed. And I'm like, Dexter Williams ran a 4.6, and he was – nobody ever caught Dex. Well, Troy Pride did once, but that's it. You know what I mean? In a spring game. But it's not about like you've got to have this trait. You've just got to be productive, right? Kyron Williams is not going to run a 4.3 at the scouting combine, right? He was not a super highly ranked recruit either. It's about, do you have vision? Do you have the feel for the game? Do you have the patience needed? Do you have the balance, the power, just the all around game? And Logan has always had that. And I think he's a very intelligent player too. Not that Audric is not, but I think those things are why Logan's been so good, really from the moment that he got on campus. I mean, that's the thing about Logan is we've been hearing reports about him from the moment he got on campus. Now, Audric was the one that got a lot of the publicity because he looks like a
he looks like a dude.
He looks like a sculptor. You just say bodybuilder, right? And he's going to be good. I can't wait to see what Audric can do. But Logan was always the better prospect.
And I think, and this is just my 2 cents. This is Vince's opinion. I think with Chris Tyree going down with that turf toe, I think Logan was a good substitute for Tyree because he can do a lot of the same things, if that makes sense.
Right.
It was an easier –
catch the ball, right.
Yeah.
You
don't have to change – the way you're doing things when you insert Logan Diggs in for Chris Tyree, if that makes sense. You'd have to change some things a little bit if you put in Audric in that spot. And so when you're talking about substituting somebody for an injury and not a long-term situation, sometimes that plug and play is just a little bit easier. And so I think that might have a little bit to do with it as well, because Estime's getting on the field in the short yardage stuff. So, I mean, it's not like he's not playing. He is getting in there at times. So he's impressed the coaches to a degree. But I think the plug and play makes a difference when you're in the middle of the season.
Yeah, it does. And I think that was the other good thing about the 2 freshman backs, both of them, is we said this summer, they both have the size to step in and play right now. I mean, you don't have to worry about them like wearing down. I mean, if a freshman gets 20 plus carries a game, he's going to wear down.
That's
but like in the role that they're going to have. And we're starting to see more of Aldrich too. I mean, they're finding roles for him. He's played special teams. He's been in the game as a lead blocker, right? If he wasn't showing them something, they wouldn't be finding roles for him on special teams. It's just you're at a loaded position group. You know, that's the thing. And that's what's making it harder to go. I mean, it is impressive. Like, look, are there things Lance Taylor needs to do better as a recruiter? Yes. Has he missed some opportunities for even better players? Yes. But the quickness with which he's been able to completely restock this depth chart, along with the help of other coaches, because he was not the primary recruiter of Logan Diggs. Terry Joseph and Tommy Reese were. But Aldrich Estime, and he helped Chip Long, get Chris Tyree. So it really is great how quickly they've been able to do it. And there's another dude coming in next year. If y'all have not seen Jadarian Price's senior film, you got to watch it. He's a beast. So it's only getting better. And, of course, they already have a commitment from Cedric Irvin, who's a change of pace guy in the 2023 class. They're looking for another guy in that class. So running back is going to be loaded here for years to come at Notre Dame.
Well, and there's always that outside chance that they could flip a kid too, right?
Sure.
I mean, just an outside
if
chance.
They put in the work. Yeah,
I'll throw it out there. Okay. John Long says, question. So with Navy attempting to shorten the game, how important is it to keep Jack Cohn in rhythm? Felt pulling him last week cost him a little 5-yard out throw in the dirt after coming back in. I think, and then he follows it up with, feel it's important to score on every possession early. That part is the key to me, is scoring early and often. I think that is very important, against this Navy team, against any team that runs triple. They're not built to come back. They're not built to quick score. They're built just for 3 yards in a cloud of dust or 3 yards and a bunch of rubber pellets, okay, because they play on turf. But you want to get on them quickly, and you have to take advantage of your possessions. You have to, because if you don't, then that gives Navy an opportunity to be good. Now, I don't think that this Navy team is good enough to hang with Notre Dame. I think they're going to be able to score quickly and often. But I agree with you. Letting Cohn get into a rhythm is very important.
3 yards and what?
A bunch of rubber pellets.
That's freaking great.
Because there's no cloud of dust.
I've never heard that before. That's so awesome.
I just made it up. I don't know.
I talked about this yesterday, Vince, in the show, which I know you heard. And it was basically, look, against Navy, the best thing you can do is to score early and score often. And I don't care if it's – I prefer quick explosive plays just because it puts them in a bit of a bind. But if it takes 7 plays, it takes 7 plays. But you got to score. And, I don't know if pulling – I don't know if that was the problem with Jack. Maybe it was, but there have been other times in the last 2 games where they've done that, and Jack's come back in and made pretty throws. So
I
think
on that throw specifically, I think he just missed it, and he knew it. It was hands on the head.
Now maybe it was because he got yanked. I mean, I'm not dismissing what you're saying, John. I don't know. We've seen other times where that's happened, and he's made good throws.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think Tyler's got to find he's got to have a role, and that occasional run him in for a play or two is not necessarily what I love, but the red zone part of it is definitely something that I'd love to see.
Oh yes. We had a super chat that was given before we even got started. So I want to pull that one up. Just your ordinary Joe. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate that.
Joe showed up. Vince, you talked to Joe for a long time at the tailgate. Joe is the guy that walked up with the Gap closer shirt and then had another Irish Breakdown shirt underneath and was rocking the Irish Breakdown.
Okay,
so now your ordinary Joe is. Yes,
now it all makes sense. Thank you, Joe. Really,
Joe is tied for the all-time lead in the highest super
chat. I had a great time talking to Joe. I could have talked to him for another few hours. That's the scary part. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Matt Sokolowski says, I work at a country club in Florida doing tennis maintenance, and there's a college tennis tournament, and Notre Dame is here right now. Not a fan of watching tennis, but still cool that some Notre Dame athletes are at my work.
I used to watch tennis when I was a kid. Like
Did
the
you
men's,
really?
like Wimbledon and like Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi and like that during that era. I used to watch.
Back when tennis was cool. Like, because
Yeah,
it was
there
cool
was like
there for a little
Americans
while.
that were really good at it.
Yeah.
And, call me the ugly American or you want, but like I relate to, like it's like I only
Absolutely.
watch soccer when it's the World Cup or the Olympics and America's good, right?
Right. Well,
But it's
for a
not-
while there,
yeah.
like Andy Roddick was the only good male American that was playing. It's like,
Yeah.
this is what we got. All
Hard
right.
pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Tommy Guns, IB Nation. What's up, Tommy? Let's see here. We got a lot of talk about Tommy's podcasts, which is good. He listens to history podcasts, which is awesome. There we go. Jacob Hayden, you mentioned in an earlier show that if Brian Kelly decided to leave Notre Dame, there's 5 people you would call about the head coaching job. Can you list those 5, or is that hush hush?
Now, we did a show on this a few weeks ago, and my 5 were John Harbaugh, Bob
Make sure you're very clear.
Make sure
on that.
real clear on that. John Harbaugh, the good Harbaugh, the one that actually wins championships.
Yes.
Bob Stoops, Jeff Brom, Dave Aranda, and Marcus Freeman would be my 5. My 5 calls, my 5 interviews.
There you go. Very good. If you've got one, there was a super chat down there towards the bottom. If you want to grab that,
We had a couple of those. Actually.
Okay, I don't want to skip to the bottom.
Yeah, I can pull those up. Okay, so I've got this one here from Alex Pulsifer. Who do you think declares early for the NFL draft? There's still a lot of unknowns. The guys that I'm confident are going to declare early right now. I'm pretty sure that it's obviously Kyle Hamilton and Kyron Williams.
Those are my 2.
The latest I heard, and again, it's been about a month since I've gotten any intel on this, but I've heard that Jarrett Patterson has always kind of been leaning towards coming back. I think a position change may shake that up a little bit. Meaning, I think he might actually be more prone to come back if there's a position change. I think the guy right now, I would imagine Jason Adamiola is going to come back, even though he's a senior. He has a 5th year. Is going to go pro. Is going to declare.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say.
I believe if I had to bet money, I would right now lean towards Isaiah Foskey coming back. And the reason I say that is I think Isaiah is a very talented player. This is an incredibly deep edge year. From what I've talked to like Ryan Roberts and some other, from Rise and Draft, who's been on our show before. Seems like this is a loaded edge year. I mean, you've got George Karlaftis, you've got Myjai Sanders, you've got Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, there's a ton of edge players. This may not be the year a guy that's played really one full year wants to come out. He still may come out. I've heard he's kind of torn on it, but I think once he gets the feedback on a more specific standpoint, then I think he may come back. But I know he's kind of, from what I'm told, he's torn 50-50. So those are the guys that I feel are. Now, other guys may not come back, but they're not going to be declaring for the NFL draft. Like there may be some rising seniors that don't come back because they grad transfer somewhere else kind of thing. But as far as the NFL, those are the guys that I look at as potential options.
All right, you want to grab that other super chat, and then I'll go back to the top?
I can, yes, sir. Got a couple actually down here. John DeCrisio said Drake Bowen said in an interview that he always wanted to play for Alabama but never got an offer. Why do you think Alabama wouldn't offer him? I don't know. I was told originally that they didn't offer because they were afraid he was a Notre Dame lock.
I heard that from somebody else too. That was a lot of the whoa, they're only an hour away from Notre Dame, he's going to go to Notre Dame kind of thing, right. Even though that really wasn't the case. I mean, it ended up being that way, obviously, but like that wasn't his intention all along.
Right.
And I think some teams got in on him late, and it was too late.
Right. And the other thing too is I don't know if Nick Saban ever really recruiting a 2-sport guy. And I wonder if that's part of the thing for Nick Saban too is, this isn't a place you can really be a 2-sport guy. You can't lose the spring of football and be a starting linebacker against the group of guys at Alabama. I don't know that. That's kind of always been a thought of mine about.
Would make sense.
Because Drake Bowen, like we said, he's a legitimate 2-sport guy. This isn't like he's an okay baseball player and they're going to just appease him and give him a shot as a freshman to go play baseball. He's a legitimate, like I've been told he's going to get drafted in the Major League draft.
I heard that as well, yeah.
And so I think that's obviously something to consider as well. I don't know if that's part of it as well. And then we have another super chat from John A1. I saw his avatar pop up. Happy Friday, IB. Excited to see my first Notre Dame game. That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Nice.
And
that's fantastic.
Look, we said this summer that if somebody said if you can only make to one game, that kind of thing, and we said Notre Dame Navy would be a cool first game to get to because of everything involved. So I hope that you enjoy it, enjoy the pageantry, because you're going to see things this weekend that you don't normally see in a Notre Dame game, which is part of what makes this rivalry so much fun.
Well, and there's kind of a similar tone here. Where is it? Just went away. Oh, here we go. Jacob Hayden. Where is the best location to stand during the player walk? I'll be at the game tomorrow. Now, that walk starts at the Goog, and then it goes by Touchdown Jesus, and then comes straight down, I believe, past the reflecting pool and then into the stadium. My guess, and I have only been there one time, but my guess is it gets more crowded the closer you get to the stadium. So either get there early and get anywhere, or my guess is closer to the Goog you get, the less the crowd is going to be. That would be my suggestion. I remember I walked with a recruit one time, like in the player walk, and it wasn't as crowded when we started, and it got more crowded as you get closer to the stadium. That could have been a one-off.
I would say, Jacob, I would ask other people in the chat. Like I know Brandon Plensner's been seen the player walk. I would encourage them. Encourage them. So if you've been a part of the player walk before and you have advice for Jacob, please put it in the chat so Jacob can kind of look at that, because I've never been part of the player walk, so I don't have an answer to that. So, but yeah, I can. Yeah, I don't. My wife used to take pictures of it when she was doing photography for us, but she would get on top of the stadium and kind of take pictures down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. And somebody said this about the 5 coaches we would call. I'm not calling Lincoln Riley because that's a wasted conversation, and all he's going to do is use that to negatively recruit against us.
Right.
There's no way Lincoln Riley's leaving Oklahoma to come to Notre Dame. No way. And that's the thing, is you can't say, well, I'm going to call Bill Belichick.
Right.
And Lincoln. You got to be smart about who you can actually get, because what will happen is if you just start calling every good coach in the country and start asking them, hey, you want to come? They're going to say no, and they're either going to use you for a pay raise, or B, they're going to negatively recruit. Well, Notre Dame tried to come and get me, but no, this is a better place than Notre Dame. So I'm not going.
Exactly.
You got to be smart. Lincoln Riley's not coming to Notre Dame.
No.
So no, I wouldn't. I mean, if Lincoln Riley called me, if I'm the AD and Lincoln Riley's agent calls me and says he's interested, heck to the yes, he's getting a phone call. He immediately vaults up near the top of my list.
Right.
But he's not making that call.
Yeah, that's a whole different conversation then. Jacob Hayden then kind of follows up. He says, any intel on good places to possibly get pictures and autographs before or after the game? After the game is the best time. If you just hang out at the gate on the north side of the stadium, that's where all the players come out. And when the game is over, now generally they're meeting their family and such, so you got to be careful a little bit. But when we used to leave through that gate at the end of games, we were sifting through autograph hounds and fans and kids and stuff, waiting on the players to come out.
Autograph seekers.
Hounds. No, I'm just joking. But anyway, that would be, I think, the best. But you're not going to get anything before the game. I mean, they're pretty dialed in. They're pretty focused, and the player walk is they walk. I mean, they don't really stop to do stuff. So that would be my suggestion. Would be after the game, outside the gate is where I would hang out.
Okay.
Coleman.
That I do remember.
Yeah, right. Do you think Sebo will transfer after this year?
I mean, he's a senior, so he's graduating. So I would imagine he would find a place to go carry the ball more as a fifth-year senior. I don't know. I haven't been told that definitively, but I would imagine he's going to find somewhere else to play, because he's not going to play a ton next year. I mean, it's not like,
no.
Look, if Logan Diggs has already passed you up already,
right? No, I agree.
Yeah.
Just your ordinary Joe. Great explanation of cut block versus chop block in Football 101. Gotta love the boards. Follow-up question. I'm assuming that's what FU stands for. Why so inherent?
Or it's an FU question. I would
just saying. Why so inherent to triple option? Couldn't they just quote regular block?
No, because what you're trying to do in the triple option is you're trying to create immediate running lanes. So you're trying to create, you're trying to cut because you're trying to make an immediate lane.
You can't get
right?
stalemated.
Yeah, it's not a zone where if you wash the guy out, you're going to cut behind it. No, it is trying to create hard and fast. The ball's going here, and we need to make sure that this path is cleared.
Right.
Is essentially for. Plus, it's quick hitters. I mean, those fullback dives hit the line of scrimmage quick. Those fullback tucks hit the line of scrimmage quick. If you're just normal
blocking, 2 yards back, give or take, for the fullback to
2.5 to 3 at the most.
You're sniffing some,
Yeah, it's not like an I formation fullback, right? I mean, you sometimes they'll get a little bit deeper if they're going to do more of like a wide thing. But I mean, those things hit quick, and you've got to get the movement stopped right away. Right now, there are times we've seen Navy incorporate this too, where they will not cut block. They don't cut block on every play. They'll actually, if you're going to go, they're going to wash you because they're going to basically do a bend. I mean, they're going to bend that thing back. So they're going to take advantage of, slants and things like that, which is part of the evolution of the triple option. But that's the reason why they do cut blocks. And then on perimeter, it's the same thing.
Right.
You want to get those pursuers chopped, so you've got a free rein to the outside.
Yep, absolutely correct.
Great question.
Coleman Smith, where does the O-line recruiting stand in 2023?
Super early. And I believe Monroe Freeling is going to make another visit back to campus. Notre Dame's trying to get Chase Basantis onto campus. Obviously, Caden Proctor is priority number one. They like TJ Shanahan a lot, Harris Sewell from Texas, Caden Green, just some other names. There was a kid that they were recruiting, Josh Padilla. He just committed to Ohio State, I believe, yesterday. That was always kind of where you thought he was going to end up. So those are just some early names, but it's really early. I don't know, especially with some of the rumblings around about possibly there being a new coach at Notre Dame next year. I still don't know if I buy that or not. I think Brian Kelly's going to use a strong finish, just like, this is why he needs to stay and all that kind of stuff. Did you see that
publication that was put on the Facebook page, our Facebook group, about they ranked the top offensive line coaches?
Yeah, they had Ed Warner from Florida Atlantic #2, so I laugh at those kind of things. That company, that boomer company, they I feel like they just put out stupid things just to kind of create, just to go viral, because that's all they do. It's just really
good Lord.
Worthless.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really early, Coleman, and I would imagine it's going to take at least until the winter before they start to get an idea of not only I know who they like, but in regards to who. And they just offered a young man. I'm trying to remember his name now, but they just offered a young man recently from southeastern part. I'm actually going to try to find his name because he's a pretty good player too. But they offered a couple kids that actually visited this past weekend. So they're still expanding the board and trying to make pushes for kids. But let me see if I can find this guy. Looks like I don't know if I follow him yet. So maybe I did not follow him yet. But anyway, they have offered a couple offensive linemen recently. Kobe Keenum, I believe, is a guy that they just recently offered. He's an offensive lineman. So yeah, so there's definitely some. Oh, here we go, Vyson. Oh, there we go. What's that? I forget what his last name is. Vyson Lang from Alabama. He visited recently, and Notre Dame just offered him. He's another kid from 2023 that's new to the board.
All right. Scott Yerbick says, how do we sit with Dante Moore, and what percentage do you give for our chances to land him?
I've said for a while, we talked about this the other day in the recruiting show. I like where Notre Dame is at with Dante Moore. Now, they got to finish and they got to close, but I'd rather be where Notre Dame is than a lot of other people. I'm just being honest with you. And I know that I'm in the minority in holding that view, but I have always heard great things about how Dante feels about Notre Dame. I've always heard a lot of good things about Dante's understanding of what Notre Dame can offer him beyond just the football. And that now includes the NIL stuff. Look, being the quarterback at Notre Dame is going to offer you a level of, especially if you're good, is going to offer you a level of exposure you just really can't get almost anywhere else, except maybe Bama now. And he's smart. But even before the NIL stuff, it was about the academics and the opportunities and those type of things to challenge. I think Dante wants to be challenged. I think great quarterbacks do. And then being challenged on and off the field, which is what you're going to get at Notre Dame, is something that I think entices him. Now, again, that doesn't mean it's a no-brainer. It's not a lock. I'm not betting my mortgage next month on Dante Moore picking Notre Dame, but I really like where Notre Dame is at. chances to land him, too early for that. When he gets closer to decision mode, I'll feel better. But I like where Tommy Rees has placed Notre Dame in that recruitment. I'll feel even better if he gets back on campus again here by the end of the year. But I like where Notre Dame stands with Dante Moore.
Demetrius Rex, where does Navy's defense stack up against the rest of Notre Dame's schedule, particularly against the bad defenses in the back half of the schedule?
This is probably the defense. They're probably playing better than any defense that they face. Now, they don't have the talent of other teams. They don't have anybody on their roster like some of the kids in North Carolina has, but they're actually playing good defense right now for them, against not great offenses.
It's grading on the curve.
Right. Yes, exactly. Compared to just the atrocious defenses that Notre Dame is going to face down the stretch. Where are they on the schedule? To me, they're the worst team that Notre Dame is going to play this year. They are.
It is. It just is, yeah. Jimmy James, who's ready for Dublin 2023.
Vince texted me last night. Time to start putting some money away. So, yeah. Jimmy James also just signed up for the message board, so I appreciate that.
Oh, nice.
I believe he did. So I appreciate that, Jimmy, very, very, very much. And for anyone else who wants to do that, right there at the bottom, boards.irishbreakdown.com, you can join.
Irish Cubby, what's up, IB Nation? Not sure why, but I've never liked the Navy head coach. I'm hoping we can make a statement to the committee and win 50-14. Go Irish. That would be a statement.
Definitely agree with that. I have a lot of respect for Ken Niumatalolo.
There you go. Nice. Well done.
Yeah. I think as a coach, he's done a great job at Navy. I just don't care much for him. And part of it for me is I felt like, and he's gone away from this. He's not this way. His sideline antics early on in his tenure were obnoxious.
Okay.
They were like PJ Fleckish. And I thought his team was they aren't as bad anymore, but for a while there, I thought Navy played really dirty. And I did not like that. I mean, late cut blocks. I still remember a really bad late cut block on Robert Blanton. And just the way that they acted, I was like, man, that was the only time in my career, his first few years at Navy was the only time in my life that I actually was like, you know what? I know that this rivalry means a lot to me, but if they're going to do that, then you know what I mean? Forget that. Mm-hmm. And they've changed. I think he's kind of grown into the position a little bit. But, yeah, I've had a hard time getting over some of that, to be honest with you. I think that's a lot of the reason why.
Jay Wiki Jr. says, in recruiting dual sport athletes like Bowen, do you think the staff had to go and pitch him to the baseball team or vice versa? And how closely did the two staffs work together on him?
On some players, yes, you have to pitch him to the other team, sport. Yes, because they're
like, hey, give us a shot here. Yeah.
Hey, can you help us out with this kid? Right.
Right.
That was not the case with Drake Bowen. My understanding is the baseball team, if Drake Bowen would decided he just wanted to play baseball, the Notre Dame baseball team was going to recruit Drake Bowen.
Yeah.
From my understanding is he is look, is he like an elite top 100 player in baseball? No, he's not there. But like in baseball, if you're a top 500 player, I mean, that's pretty good in baseball. He is a top player in this region. Notre Dame would have tried to recruit him and did. And so, yes, the football team and the baseball team did work together on him. And that's what we were told was something that was very important towards the end of getting him away from Auburn, because Auburn did a phenomenal job selling the baseball angle. And it was the combination of Marcus Freeman and Chad Bowden with Link Jarrett and his staff that ultimately sealed the deal. If Link Jarrett's not Notre Dame's head baseball coach, I don't know if I'd feel as good. And if it wasn't for, if Marcus Freeman wasn't the new DC or Link Jarrett wasn't the head coach, no chance of getting Drake Bowen. None.
And the success that Notre Dame has had in baseball over the last year and a half,
which is a byproduct of bringing in Link Jarrett, in my
100%.
opinion. Yeah.
Yes, no question about it.
I know you're very, very high on Link Jarrett.
Yeah,
as a coach.
It's unfortunate. It's not unfortunate that I coach baseball, but I would love to cover this Notre Dame team like on a regular basis. And it's hard for me, obviously, because I'm coaching. But like, I really respect the job that he's done, because no matter what anybody says, it's still hard to win in the North.
They play the game the way it's supposed to be played at that level.
Absolutely. I really am hoping that they do some sort of a coach's clinic, because I will be one of the first ones in line to go talk to those guys. But another conversation for another time. All right. Scott Yerbick.
We do have a super chat down here,
yes,
Vince,
please.
if you don't mind me getting down to that.
I don't mind at all.
Got one from Richard Maltby. Glad to see Vincent, Twins reference, healthy and back at it. Ooh, he's a little Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito reference there. Nice. Glad to see Vincent healthy and back at it. Not glad to see all of the dismay in this game taking place. I haven't paid attention to the chat, but I didn't realize. Yeah. Let's see. Richard also has another super chat. Thank you for that, Richard. The history is one thing, but a lot of people do not understand the kind of talent the Navy gets from the University of Notre Dame. All about respect. So there was something that I saw the other day that no other institution has produced more officers in the Naval Academy at Navy than Notre Dame. Besides Navy, like other than the Naval Academy.
I see. I got
you. Know, like other colleges.
Sure.
I saw somebody had something like that. So yeah. That's that was the reason we had that article at irishbreakdown.com. And the article was titled, and I didn't come up with this. Like I come up with the titles for all the stories, even the ones that I don't write. But I didn't come up with this one. Andrew McDonough did, who wrote the article. And normally, even when people give me title suggestions, I change it. But his was perfect. And it was Notre Dame and Navy, a bond forged in blood, I think is what it was. And I mean, it was just... I'm going to find it here again because it was just so – if you haven't read it, you've got to read it.
Put it in the chat.
Yes, a bond forged in blood. I'm going to put it in the chat now. Good call, Vince. It was if you don't really fully understand, like it was kind of this thing about why Notre Dame plays Navy, I just put a link in the chat down there that you've got to check out that I think explains it really, really, really well.
Awesome. Back to Scott's question. He says, with Drake Bowen, is he leaning more towards MLB or NFL career? If he gets drafted high enough after his sophomore season, will he bolt to Major League Baseball instead of staying for his junior year at Notre Dame? Go Irish, beat Navy. I thought that they had once, so he can get drafted out of high school, but then once he declares that he's going to college, doesn't he have to stay for?
There's some kind of new rule that guys can come out at, but yeah, I'd have to look into that, Vince. But I know guys that go to junior colleges can come out after 2.
Okay.
Right? There's some kind of rule that gives exceptions. I'd have to look into it. I'm not familiar enough with the rule, but I don't think Drake would fit into that. I think he'd have to be a junior.
Okay.
I'm not as concerned about Drake leaving for Major League Baseball once he gets to Notre Dame. I think the concern I would have would be more that he chooses baseball out of high school.
Right, depending on how high he gets drafted and what that signing bonus looks like.
And of course, there's a chance that he could play Notre Dame in the fall and then do minor league baseball in the spring and summer. He could do that. I don't think that would be the case. It has been done, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've had a Heisman Trophy winner did that. Ricky Williams and Russell Wilson did that. That's one of the reasons NC State decided to go with Mike Glennon. Stupid. Instead of Russell Wilson. But I'd be more concerned about him getting drafted this summer and going than I would be once he gets to Notre Dame. I think once he gets to Notre Dame, and he's playing football, if he's a starting football player at Notre Dame, he's not leaving for the Major League Draft. He would, I would imagine football would be the thing he would focus on. Yeah.
A lot of discussion about what people would do, NFL or Major League Baseball.
Got a couple questions down here about this recruitment as well, Vince, that I'll pull up as well. But Paul Rose has one. My SIG guy. If Bowen the type of kid that will help recruit players like Sonny Styles and AJ Harris to help build this defensive class? 100%. He said so when he committed, and we've already seen comments from Sonny Styles and him. Drake was going to come back, I believe it was for the Georgia Tech game, but Sonny Styles is going to be on campus this weekend, so Drake's going to be at Notre Dame this weekend. So yeah, he's already. It helps when
you live very close by too. You can come on your own dime, no big deal, and you can recruit. Scott had a follow-up here. He says, I have to say you guys are the best to listen to around Notre Dame football. I've listened to others, and they put me to sleep. I only listen to you guys. Appreciate what you do. Go Irish.
We appreciate you, Scott, very much. I can't comment on the first part of what you said, but I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Oh boy.
You got something you want to put up? I got one if you don't.
No, just
Okay. Yeah,
so much I want to say.
I know.
Find another question quickly.
Absolutely. Rob Titoff, Brian and Vince, it seems like every time Kevin Austin either makes a catch or drops a catch, he's limping back to the huddle. Is his ankle bothering him, or is it just my false observation?
I would imagine it's your false observation, because when Kevin's not running full speed, he has a little bit of a weird.
He's got an interesting gait.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that.
It is, because he kind of, it's like the way he runs, you'd kind of, if you look at it quickly, you'd kind of think like, is he limping?
Right. Timeout Tom. ND has recruited well with edge defenders. I feel there's need for a couple 300-plus pounder defensive tackles. Are there additional recruits in 22 they can pursue, or in 23 they can fill that need?
I don't think there's the need for that. I think it's more about power and leverage. Look, Aaron Donald's the most dominant interior force in the NFL. He's 285, right? 290 at the most. Notre Dame plays an aggressive attacking defense. They don't need 300-plus pounders. If you can get an athletic 300-plus pounder, go for it. I'm not anti 300 pounders. I'm just not going to go bring one in just because he's 300 pounds.
Right.
There just aren't a ton of those guys left, and those guys tend to go to like Georgia and places like that because they play in more physical 3-4, fit their size type of deals. Give me a 290-pound penetrator over a 310-pound run plugger any day of the week, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is you have to remember is that Notre Dame's trying to eventually go to a 3-down defense. And their 3-down is going to be very attacking. It's not going to be just a plug and play.
Right.
So I don't think there's the need for that to force feed that. Now, if you can find a guy like that, Hero Canoe is going to be 300-plus pounds. But I'm not bringing him in because he's going to be 300-plus pounds. I'm bringing him in because he's athletic and powerful and can make a lot of plays. That, to me, is the bigger key to getting that done.
D-Rock, after a 2-day hiatus from IB, back in the house today for the live show.
Did we offend you, D-Rock? I mean, what happened, man? Like, are you upset with
the
Vince?
Self-imposed timeout?
Yes, Vince wasn't here, so you're like, get out of here.
Ryan M. Speaking of running backs, love what I see from Jadarian. Great vision, north-south running. Think he can be really, really good.
I agree. Great feet.
Yeah.
He's having a monster year. I'm going to have an article up on him later today that Brian Smith wrote for us. He was actually at Jadarian's game last week.
I know you've kind of touched on this, but if you just want to give a quick recap, Toe Jam 1992, great name, by the way. Are there any late additions to the 22 class that we have a shot at?
I think the two best they have a shot at are Billy Shrouth and Xavier Nwankpa. And again, I feel very good about where things stand with Billy Shrouth, although the longer it goes, just the weirder it gets. And
seriously.
But for me, when Xavier Nwankpa, I've always felt they have a much better shot at than most people do. And so we'll see. We'll see if that pans out, but I like where Notre Dame stands with both of those. If I had to predict, I'd say those are the two that they'll get. Now, they're going to try for Anthony Lucas and Hero Canoe, and I know that they're still kind of recruiting other receivers, but that's only if they miss out on if Amorian Walker leaves. They would try to replace him. I don't know if they're necessarily dying to get another guy.
Irishman 7114. Glad to see they let Vince out of solitary. It is very solitary at home by yourself. Do you know if Styles has a time frame for his commitment? Glad to see him and Bowen visiting together. Go Irish. Go IB Nation.
And they visited together for the Cincinnati game as well. There's actually a picture of those two plus Nolan Ziegler that I've seen. Time frame, no. There's no specific time frame. I think that he will decide sooner rather than later. I don't see him dragging his recruitment out a long way. I think he'll decide if I had to predict, if he's uncommitted in the next 6 to 8 months, I'll be surprised. Wherever he's gonna pick. And I like where Notre Dame is there, but they've got to close. Ohio State's not easy to beat, but I think Notre Dame's put themselves in good position.
Toe Jam says, welcome back, Vince. Looks like you recovered nicely. I feel good. I feel about 96%. Toe Jam 92. Here we go. If you were doing one of those trust exercises where you had to fall backwards into your team, which ND position group would you pick?
Defensive line.
and
there is no other group. I mean, for so many reasons.
Yeah, right. That's great. That's a
but
great
just
answer.
Consistency. Yeah, the unit I trust to show up for big games. Yeah, it's them.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a better answer, to be honest. I was trying to think
Last
outside
year,
the box.
it would have been offensive line.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah. I trust all those guys to catch me. I do. But I don't think there's a better one than the defensive line. So
I don't know. There's some position groups that may, if they had a chance to let me fall, would probably let me fall. I have a feeling
that might make it. I mean, you know who I'm going to go after? I want all the walk-ons. The walk-ons can catch me. I like those guys. Wapu Nation. They can catch me. All right. Michael Brahoni. Thoughts on flipping Singleton? He plays in my hometown. He's the real deal. Would be great to have Price and Singleton.
That would be Nicholas Singleton, who's a running back committed to Penn State. I mean, I'd be fine with it. I love Nicholas Singleton. I have only said numbers are tight in this class, and I would just rather see them use those tight numbers on positions of greater need.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that he's not an excellent player. It's just sometimes when you only have X number of scholarships, you have to say, hey, look, yeah, we love this kid, but we're kind of good there. We need guys over here.
Yeah.
That would be the reason for that. But if they have room for him and he's interested, heck yeah, I'd try to flip him. I just don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think James Franklin would literally have to leave Penn State for that to happen.
And that's,
but I'll tell you right, if Notre Dame's not talking to Drew Aller, Nicholas Singleton, Caden Saunders, and Drew Shelton, they're not doing this recruiting thing correctly.
I agree. They should at least be in their ear.
Those are 4 Penn State kids. Yep, those are 4 Penn State kids that like the Notre Dame a lot, that I think Notre Dame could flip if they start now and then James Franklin leaves, and then you're going to be in a much better position. Right. If you wait till James Franklin leaves, you're not going to get him because other schools are already starting on him.
Absolutely. And they should be. They should be. All right, Jeff Fluke. Let's say Alabama doesn't make the playoff. Long shot. I don't think it's that long of a shot. Just going to throw that out there. Mm-hmm. Would you want to face them in a bowl game?
I'll never be afraid of competition. So yes, of course. I mean, if you're trying to be the best, you always need to gauge yourself against the best.
Yep.
Do I think Notre Dame would win? Not the way they're playing right now. Do I think Notre Dame could battle with them if they continue growing and developing and getting better as a program? Yes, I do. I think they can hang with Alabama. This is not your typical Alabama team. They will be next year, but this year they're not. And look, even next year they're going to be really good. I think Alabama is truly, truly, truly special. They're just way better than everybody else years are behind them.
Yeah, right. I agree with that. Super chat. You want to grab that one, Brian?
Yes, sir. David Carpenter, falling into the D-line position group. D-line is a good choice. Some groups may not be assignment correct. That is a great, great response, David. Great response. Like, there's no way in heck I'm falling into the offensive line group because A, they'd probably let me fall, and B, even if they didn't want to let me fall, I'm not guaranteed that they'd have the proper hand placement to catch me. That is a phenomenal response, David.
That is awesome.
That is a great.
That is worth every penny response of that super chat, David.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was awesome.
That was great.
That was
absolutely great.
Since D-Rock admittedly was not in the chat yesterday, I'll throw up his prediction. He says Notre Dame 31, Navy 20. Middies score late twice, and BK has the team do a knee on the Navy 5-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that happening, by the way. Just saying.
We got Alex. Got to get that comment up. Little got to give him a hard time.
I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan, but no November games for this guy. I learned my lesson. The couple I went. Brr.
Yeah, so I'm going to make fun of you and call you soft for being there, but let's just say that I will be sitting in my living room for all November games.
Right.
Okay. So I'm just calling you soft just out of projection.
Yeah. And I'll be sitting in the press box with my jacket on.
Yeah. Because Vince definitely is soft when it comes to cold. I don't like being cold.
Yeah. I don't like being cold either.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't have my winter coat on like some people did last week. I just want to put that out there. I just had a sweat. I had my Irish Breakdown hoodie on. So representing the brand.
Yeah. But honestly, like for me, it would depend on who they play. I'm not going to a November game against Georgia Tech, right? Just me, because again, I don't like being cold.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I couldn't write stories on my iPad because of how cold it is. I mean, so practically it would make no sense. But like if it was Clemson or like a bigger name, I'd be out there.
Yeah.
Definitely be out there.
Yep. Omar wants to know if we're going to Dublin next year. It's 2 years from now. Mm-hmm. And the reality is
not going to Dublin next year.
Yeah. The reality is probably not. But
I'd like to.
I would love to.
We're gonna. Yeah, it's just for me. It's things would have to change,
right,
in regards to travel and requirements for travel that for me would make it difficult. But yeah, if we're able to do it, we'll certainly try to do that. My wife and I were planning to go to Dublin last year,
right,
for that game.
I remember that. Yeah,
it got canceled. It was like literally, it's like it all started like I was getting ready to buy my tickets when people started talking about, like, are they gonna have a season? I was like, let me go ahead and hold off on that non-refundable flight and hotel here real quick.
Seriously.
So luckily that worked out.
Nate Wallace wants to know what position Drake Bowen plays for baseball.
I think he's an outfielder.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't.
Yeah, I thought he was an outfielder,
but there's a reason that I'm not scheduling Andrean on my baseball schedule. I'll just say that. So, because they are somebody we could easily play, and I'm not doing that.
Yes, I understand.
I'm not a glutton for punishment.
I'm gonna try to find that out.
A lot of suggestions on where to get autographs and where to go, which is awesome.
Here's an interesting one, Vince. Coleman Smith says, USC was my first game in 07 when I was 5 and opened the gate for the players during the player walk. So first of all, I hate you right now because you were 5. I was in my late 20s. That was also my first Notre Dame game. So Coleman and I were both on campus for the first, or at a home game for the first time. I'd been on campus before. I'd actually been in the stadium. I'd been to a spring game once, but never a real game.
Michael has one here. Michael says, hey, Brian and Vince, appreciate all you do. Thanks, Michael. Can you list some of the important recruits that will be in town for the Navy game? Thanks, guys.
I honestly have not looked at the list. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't. I would imagine Tom Loy's got a full list of who's.
And this is there. Probably not a game necessarily that they're pushing recruits to come to. But,
I mean well, I think right now they actually are, because they just want to get some kids back on campus. It's just more about wanting to be around guys, but they're not pushing the game day experience, the environment. And a lot of it's guys that have already been here, like Monroe Freeling, who's a big offensive lineman at 23, Sonny Styles. Right, guys that you don't necessarily have to impress with the environment, but you just want to get more face-to-face time.
Right.
There's guys like that, but I'm not. I honestly have not. I've had a lot on my plate this week that I've been trying to get ready, and with some of these back-end business things, so that's why I have not had a chance to take a look, Michael. But I apologize.
Anthony Solomon, he said he's talking about Drake Bowen. He said that Alabama wanted him to pick one sport to play, and that
doesn't surprise me.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Got a super chat down here from Bren Chris. Hey, Brian and Vince, my first time joining live. There you go.
Yes.
And thank you for your super chat as well. Question, as a coach, how to approach game planning, like how you choose plays, how many, and then also on D. So on offense, it's a process. The first thing that I would do, and that we always did, was, number one, you kind of you first get a first look at your opponent. Okay. And then you kind of get a feel for, this is the kind of defense they play, and you get a grasp of that. Then the next thing that I would do is you say, okay, what are some things that we can do to build around our best players? And that's how the early part of the game plan goes into. Okay, so we are going to here's our 3 or 4 concepts that we're going to run every week. What are the ways that we can effectively run them in this game? So you start looking at formations. Okay, look, this team lines up this way, so this formation is going to allow us to either get an isolation that we like or to out leverage them, things along those lines. Then you start kind of taking it to the next level. How are ways that we can manipulate them to get our base package going, right? So we're an inside-outside zone team. What are things we need to do formationally against that defense? And because it's, when I say against the defense, it's really twofold. One is how they line up. 2 is what's the personnel, right? If they've got a weak end that we can hammer, I'm going to look for every possible way to say, how can we run and exploit that weakness? If they're soft up the middle, if they have linebackers that aren't fast to the perimeter, there's things that we're going to do to try to exploit that, right? So that's the next part of what you're trying to do. Then you get into your building your pass game around your run game in a lot of years. Okay, these are the formations that we like for the run game. How do we fit our offense, our pass game around it? Then it's okay, here's things we think we can be really successful with in the pass game. You build those in, and then you say, okay, what are some wrinkles we can add to our run game that will complement that, so that people don't just know that when we line up here, it's going to be a pass game. And it's all built around the idea of using your best players to take advantage of their weaknesses, is the way that I look at it. And then, of course, you get deeper into the week. It's about, okay, now it gets into situational football. What's our third down package going to be? What's our 2-minute package going to be? What's our red zone package going to be? What's our coming out package? Coming out is you're going to if you're inside the 10, you may have some, like, going out, like you're backed up inside your own 10. You're going to have a sort of a safe package or a big play package, depending on what the other team does. Hey, when we're backed up at the 2 and we go 13 personnel with a receiver outside, they're going to cover 0. So we're going to take a shot. We've seen Notre Dame do that. They did that against Navy in Northwestern in 2018, if you remember, because Northwestern got real edgy and they just threw a bomb to Chase Claypool, and Ian hit him perfectly, and Chase made the play and got him out of trouble. So you kind of put all that together as you go through the week. And then after Tuesday, you run some stuff and you're like, yeah, that didn't work. So we got to alter it. We got to maybe tinker with it a little bit. And then by Wednesday, you'd like to have a full idea of what your game plan is going to be. By Thursday, you've got your situational stuff really figured out, your third down, your red zone, and you've got your script, because your Thursday team period is going to be a lot of situational football, but you'll also work through your script on Thursday as well. That's your first 15 plays. And so that's what I do offensively. And defensively, it's similar. It's very similar to what they do, but that's how it was for me, Vince. I don't know if you guys did anything
similar,
different than that.
Probably not as in depth, because defenses aren't as complex at high school as they are in the college ranks, and so you kind of know what you're getting. Essentially, it's just a matter of executing offensively to make sure that you can take advantage of what they're doing defensively and things like that. Like there's a certain team that we would always play. They would always play man-to-man, or they would always play cover 3. We knew exactly what we needed to do to beat it, and we just couldn't execute it. I mean, it just so we weren't quite as complex as you guys, but very similar preparation, no question about it.
Got a super chat from Lucas Chapman. Thank you so much for this, Lucas. I appreciate it. He says, I just want to show love for your content and the community that has been built. That's the part I really love.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate all the hard work and realistic analysis. It really does feel like a family. Go Notre Dame. Notre Dame 41, Navy 17. And that's also something we wanted to do different. It's not just we're Irish Breakdown, you're the peons who give us money, and we don't respect your opinion and all those kind of things. It doesn't mean we won't disagree and push back, but that's part of what a family does. But
he and I disagree a lot of times, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I'm trying to get him to disagree more publicly, but he won't do it. And we're not going to fake disagreements. That's the other thing. But
exactly.
That's been the thing, is we just wanted to do a little different, and we wanted to make it feel like, hey, look, yes, we're putting in all the work, but if I'm just sitting there writing articles and nobody's reading them, it doesn't matter how hard I'm working. Right. And that's what's made this a lot of fun. It really has.
No question.
And thank you for and it's stuff like that makes it feel like a family, because you guys are here every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Lucas.
That's awesome.
Okay. Here's one from John Erickson. He says, do you think any freshman DBs transfer because of lack of playing time?
I'd be surprised.
I would be too.
I would. Yeah,
I would be too. All right, Brian, I'm at 1258.
Okay.
I don't know if I think you can probably get up there.
I think so. Yeah, I see where you're at.
All right, cool. I'm going to have to take off because school is school, brother.
All right.
And, but yeah, in case there's anybody out there from Mishawaka Caveman land, I will talk to all of you tonight at 7.
Yeah, we had one person that's really worried about whether or not you're going to be able to do the game tonight.
I will be there. Pre-game starts at 7:15. See everybody later.
Alex Pulsfer says, I remember watching Notre Dame versus Pitt in overtime in 2012, and I swear it was the coldest I've been in my entire life. The only warm place was in the bathroom. So, yeah, I'm curious where you're from, Alex, because I was at that game, and it was not that cold, and I don't like being cold. So I'm curious where you're from, or maybe you're just I don't know. I forget what it'd be, warm-blooded, right? If the cold bothers you, I think it's warm-blooded. Vince, did you ever teach science? Vince is still down there. Is it cold-blooded or warm-blooded? Vince is a history and PE teacher. He has no idea. All right. Here we go. Curtis Hewitt. Vince, you want to see this one before you leave. Curtis Hewitt says, hey, so just so you know, like the way it works is I'm here and I can see this, but down below I can see who's in the waiting room, and Vince is still in the waiting room. So I can see him. He said, but so that's why I'm talking to him. I'm not nuts. Hey guys, how's it going? Vince, I have a 12-year-old boy and girl twins. Just wanted to let you know I can relate. Double the bad and double the good. And Vince is down there going like this, like, oh yes. And having talked to Vince about his children, I can assure you he loves them, but it's also like, okay, they're awesome. They're really good kids. Delali says, on campus with my dad for our first game. Go Irish. That is so cool. There's a lot of people that I've seen, Vince, that are going to be here at Navy for the first game. Terry Howie says, Swarbrick must be close to retirement. Could possibly see a new AD and head coach in the next 3 years. I think it's possible. I think it's certainly possible. We have a super chat down here from Michael Johnson. Michael says, good afternoon, IB Nation. I missed the live chats. Had to be an adult. I think that adult thing is very overrated. Michael, and I am glad that you are past that and you're back with us because we've missed you. Because as we've said before, Michael is clearly the best dressed member of this community. But we've missed you and we appreciate you being back with us. It's been an interesting week for sure, but we're glad to have you back. And thank you so much, Michael, for your super chat and for being a part of our community. We have a question here. I was thinking that he can't win at Oklahoma because of a lack of defense. Everyone knows if he would come to Notre Dame, he'd win multiple with Freeman and company. I think that's assuming that Marcus Freeman would stay, number one. And the other thing, too, is I don't think Oklahoma has bad defenses because it's Oklahoma. I think part of the reason they don't have great defenses is because of Lincoln Riley. I mean, he has to prioritize defense as a coach much more, meaning – there are some things I'd like to see them do offensively to help the defense a little bit. I think they need to structure practice in a different way to help the defense. But they've gotten better. They've gotten better on defense. They're not a juggernaut, but they've got to recruit better. But they've got to do things from a head coaching and a coaching standpoint too that helps the defense. It's not just about not having good players, because they've recruited some really good players in the last 5-6 years. They just don't always play to that level. Craig Sebring says, I have seen Notre Dame play Navy twice, once in the Meadowlands and in Baltimore, and saw Notre Dame play Air Force in South Bend and Army at Yankee Stadium. That's interesting. Yeah, so I've seen Notre Dame play all three academies now. I saw Notre Dame play Navy a bunch. I've seen Notre Dame play Air Force. I covered the 2011 game against Air Force. I was not at the 2013 game out at Air Force, but I saw the 2011 game. And then I covered Notre Dame Army in San Antonio in 2016. So yeah, I've had a chance to see all three of them play. Yeah, I'll tell you, one of my bucket list items, one of my bucket list items is to go to an Army Navy game. And the only reason I am hesitant is because it's in Philly and I don't like Philly. But other than that, I would love to go to an Army Navy game. Here we go. Joe, just your ordinary Joe. Joe says, you guys have my permission to use any super chat I ever give on a great vacation. I appreciate that very, very, very much. Christopher Jenkins says, Brian, is the O-line playing better, producing better results, less sacks, tackles for loss because it's improving, or because the defenses we've playing the last 2 weeks are worse? I think it's both. Look, I don't think – look, here's what we have to do. We have to make sure we don't make one of two mistakes. Number one, you can't undersell the improvements that the line has made. It would be very unfair, and it would be very, in my opinion, it would be sort of confirmation bias to just dismiss any improvement they've made. They have played better. They're not giving up the mistakes that they've made. They're not letting the run-throughs go. They're not, just physically getting whooped the way they were earlier. They are playing better. But then you also have to look at context and say, well, it's not a complete coincidence that they happen to get better as they started playing really bad defenses. So it's both. And I think a fair analysis is going to be both. If they went and played Purdue tomorrow, they would not look like they did the last 2 weeks because Purdue has a much better front. Same thing with Wisconsin. They're not going to go out there and score 40 points on Wisconsin tomorrow. But they are getting better, and you have to give credit where credit is due. It shouldn't have taken this long. They should still be a lot better than they are, but we've asked them to get a body on a body, and that's what they're doing. They're not playing great. Vince told me that he's heard people talk about how, they're a strength of the team now, and I don't see that at all. because when you watch that 91-yard touchdown run, that's not a strength to be getting blown off the ball, but to stay engaged, right? That's doing the bare minimum of success. And that's what a lot of they're doing, but they are getting better. They are. And that's why I hope they can continue to build and build and build and build to hopefully by the time they get to the postseason, they'll have enough confidence and they'll be doing things the right way to where they can have more success against a good team. But I think it's a little bit of both of those things. Joseph Steve says, John Garcia made a comment about a Drew Pine rumor of transferring on your show a few days ago. What do you know about that? I don't remember John saying that Drew Pine was going to transfer. I know nothing about Drew Pine transferring. I don't think Drew Pine's going to transfer. I don't remember John making that comment. I think we might have said something like a hypothetical, like if such and such happens. But no, I don't remember that. I'll have to go back and look, but I don't have anything on that. I've said I don't think Drew Pine's going anywhere next year. D-Rock Irish says, my theory, BK's contract ends 2024 season. Bray, the basketball coach, contract ends 24-25 season. Swarbrick's contract, who knows? I see the three amigos riding off in the sunset together. Could happen. Could happen. Tommy Gunn says, Brian, can you explain your tweet a bit more? Your response to the guy who said Clemson would be top 4 with Wake's 8-0. Yeah, so it was a really bad take by RJ Young, who I believe works for Fox Sports. He said basically, let me pull it up because I want to get this correct. So here was let me just pull up his tweet. I want to make sure that this is correct, so the people have some context. So I'm gonna share his tweet. So basically, RJ said if Clemson had a Wake Forest 8-0 record, they'd be ranked number 2 in the country. This college football playoff system is broken and expansion is necessary. To me, this is a horrible take. This is, you have a preconceived idea of expansion and you're just going to fit whatever nonsensical point you think you can make into that. To say, well, okay, so, and I've had people come back, well, if he's saying if Clemson had Wake Forest same schedule. Well, my response was that it's nonsense, because if Clemson was 8-0 right now, they'd have a win over Georgia. If Clemson was 8-0 last year, they'd have a win over Notre Dame. If Clemson was 8-0 the year before that, they'd have a win over Texas A&M. Same the year before. The 2 years before that, they had wins over Auburn. Plus, they have to play another SEC team in South Carolina. Right? So to say if Clemson was 8-0 right now, they'd be ranked number 2. Well, they deserve to be number 2, if not number 1, because they beat Georgia, who everybody thinks is the best team. So, and then the comment was, well, no. What he's saying is if they had Wake Forest schedule. Well, that's a stupid point, because Clemson doesn't schedule like Wake Forest. Wake Forest's non-conference schedule is Norfolk State, Old Dominion, and Army. If you want to be a top 4 team, you can't schedule like an AAC team. You can't schedule Florida, Norfolk State, Old Dominion, and Army as your non-conference. And you got Clemson on your schedule. Okay, so if they would have beat Clemson and Clemson was a legit top 10 team, then they'd be up there. But literally, they have not beat a single ranked team. And their non-conference is soft. And so Wake Forest wouldn't – if Clemson played Wake Forest schedule, they would be ranked lower. And if you want evidence of that, look at Oklahoma. Where's Oklahoma ranked? Oklahoma's ranked 8th, right? Why? They haven't beat anybody. Who was Oklahoma's non-conference this year? Oklahoma didn't play a good non-conference this year. They didn't play an Ohio State like they have in the past, and that hurt them. Their non-conference this year was Tulane, Western Carolina, and Nebraska. So guess what? They struggled against Nebraska, so they're getting dinged and they're ranked lower. A team that's been in the playoff 4 out of 5 years is getting dinged because their schedule stinks. If Oklahoma had a win over Georgia or a team like that, they'd be ranked higher. So you can't say, well, if Clemson did this, because you have zero evidence of that. You know why you have zero evidence of that? Because Clemson's never played a crap non-conference schedule like the one Wake Forest has played. And I don't fault Wake Forest. I don't think Wake Forest said, hey, let's schedule these teams so we can make the college football playoff. That's not where Wake Forest is. They're just trying to win an ACC championship, right? So I don't fault them. And they also know to win a championship, normally you have to go through Clemson, which would give you that credibility to be a higher ranked team. If Clemson was a normal Clemson team and Wake Forest beats them in a few weeks when they play, then Wake Forest would jump up into the playoff. But Clemson stinks. There might not be a single ranked team on their schedule by the end of the year. So that's what that tweet meant, was it's a horrible take. And the response of, well, he means if they had Wake Forest schedule. You have zero evidence of that. You know why? Because you've never seen Clemson in the playoff era play a schedule like that. Clemson always plays at least 2 Power Fives non-conference. Always. And so you really can't look at it like that, in my opinion. And D-Rock, following up on what he had said earlier, I've been speculating on this for a while since Swarbrick extended both coaches' contracts with them and ending around the same time. So he was referring to his comment earlier. Terry Howie says, Link Jarrett is a great coach. I agree. Johnny Jimenez says, hey, guys, would you consider yourselves old heads? I'm 35 and tend to like coaches with moxie. Showboating and celebrating is not disrespect. It's reward for being better. I don't know if this makes me an old head, but I've always liked coaches with moxie. I don't think that's an old person thing. There's young people that may not like that. For me, I don't have a problem with showboating and celebrating if you've actually done something. I think a problem that a lot of people have, like my dad's this way, is if you celebrate after a 60-yard touchdown run or a big sack, I don't know many people that have a problem with that. I don't. If you tackle a guy after he gains 3 yards and it's not even a big hit and you get up, acting like you just did something, that's kind of annoying. I think that's kind of where people get to. If a guy catches a ball and makes a first down signal after an 8-yard catch, got no problem with that. If a guy gets up and rips off the Superman thing that people do after an 8-yard catch on a 3rd and 5, that's stupid. So I think it's context. I don't think showboating and celebrating is disrespect. I think that it can in itself, it can be disrespectful. It's like with anything. It's if my celebrating is me being fired up and emotional, that's not disrespect. If me celebrating is getting in your face and doing something where I'm, something like that is disrespect, because it's also something you can get called a penalty for. So I think it just requires, like with anything, context, and saying showboating and celebrating is not disrespect. It's the reward for being better. In theory, you're correct, but there are times when you can certainly cross the line, and that's where I would fall. Maybe that makes me an old head. I don't know. Don't care. It's how I think. I'm trying to get down here some more questions here. I hope everybody's patient here. Let's see. Thomas Lammers, what is everyone's redshirt status? I've not paid enough attention to special teams plays to see who has played more than 4 games. I'd have to sit down and think about that. I know Audric Estime's played more than 4. I believe Kahanu Kia's now played more than 4. I don't know about Philip Riley. So position by position, Estime, Diggs, Deion Colsey, and Lorenzo Styles are all past the 4 games. Mitchell Evans is – I'd have to go look at his. His is one I'm not sure of. Kane Barong only played 1 game before he got hurt. Offensive line, obviously Joe Alt is past. None of the other freshman offensive linemen are. Defensive line, none of them. Linebacker, I believe Prince Colley is past the 4. Secondary wise, I'm unsure. It would be Philip Riley and Justin Walters, but I haven't seen Justin Walters on special teams recently. I'll have to pay a little bit more attention to that. And Philip Riley's the other one. I think Philip has played more than 4, but I'm not sure on that. I'd have to go back and look on that one specifically. So hopefully that answers your question. And obviously Tyler Buckner's past the 4. Craig Sebring, hey, love the show as always. How is the wide receiver recruiting going for 2022 and 2023? 2022 is great. I love Tobias Merriweather. I love CJ Williams. I think they're both excellent players. Amorin Walker has some tools to work with. If he stays in the class, it's a really, really good class. I think it's missing a certain type of player. It's missing an after-the-catch kind of guy. I'm concerned that Notre Dame is recruiting to try to be like Clemson, and we're seeing how that's worked out for them. I think you need diversity of skill at wide receiver, and I don't think that CJ Williams and Tobias Merriweather are diverse enough of what I'm referring to. I'm referring to more, you've got physical guys, you've got vertical guys, you also need the guys who can do damage after the catch, and Notre Dame hasn't had enough of that in their offense, and they need more of that, and they're not recruiting that, and that's concerning for me. Andrew Goss, with Blake being as good as he is, where does Proctor go to on the line if we get him? Anywhere you can find him. Look, Blake Fisher should not be someone that's locked into left tackle. Okay, if four of your best players are tackles, somebody's got to move, and Caden Proctor's not moving, and Tosh Baker's not moving because they're too tall to move to guard. If I know some people are against this, but if the best five you can get on the field requires you to move Blake Fisher to guard, he needs to understand that. Quentin Nelson moved to guard. If Quentin Nelson can play guard, then Blake Fisher can swallow his pride and play guard. And I would imagine he'd be willing to do that if you could make the case to him that it's better for him. And the case is simple. Hey, you know who was picked the same place as Ronnie Stanley? Quentin Nelson. You know who else was a top 20 pick in the NFL draft? Zach Martin. Both of them are playing guard in the National Football League, and they're making more than any of the tackles I would imagine that Notre Dame has or will be very, very soon. So that's that would be my pitch to him. Got another couple super chats down here. John Harlow says, "Love the work you guys do." Thank you for the super chat, John. Love the work you guys do. Do you think Kelly's insistence on not bearing opponents and running up the score will hurt Notre Dame in the playoff race? Absolutely. They have to. And again, I'm not about running up the score. I'm an anti running up the score, because to me, running up the score means something very specific. It means, you're running with your first team offense, you're running play action throws in the fourth quarter up 42-10. That's not what I'm talking about. You want to put your backup quarterback in the game and do that. That's not running up the score to me. That's letting a kid that doesn't get a lot of playing time run the offense because you don't know when his time is going to be called. That's called development. And if your defense can't stop my number two offense, that's not my problem. That's your problem. However, if I have my number two offense in the game and I'm running a reverse or a trick play, that's running up the score. If I'm going for fake punts, that's running up the score. If I'm up 42-10 or 49-10 and we're in a 2-minute drive and I call timeout so I can get a field goal attempt going, that's running up the score. That's different. Letting your second team offense run the offense and get a chance to go down and score is not running up the score. It's letting them play. And we saw them do that in 2019 early with Phil Dracovic. When they let Phil Dracovic get in the game, he was moving the team down the field. I believe he led them on a score against New Mexico, and so did Brennan Clark. And then Phil led them down for scores, I think 2 scores against Bowling Green, at least 1. Then after the Michigan game, they stopped really putting Phil in an opportunity to do that for, I think, obvious reasons. But early on, and that team was scoring a ton of points in a lot of those games. So, scored 52-0 against BG, 66-14 against New Mexico. We saw them put those points on the board. I would like to see more and more of that. Anthony L., thank you for the super chat, Anthony. What are your 3 or 4 favorite Notre Dame games post 1988? So for me, obviously the Sugar Bowl after the 1991 season would be there. That's one. Oh, this is a good question. Let me think about that one, Anthony. I think the Sugar Bowl is definitely one. The 93 Notre Dame Florida State game would be another. I'd have to really think about this. The 2014 game over Michigan was a ton of fun. Being at that stadium, watching them just annihilate Michigan was a lot of fun. Those are in the conversation. I'd have to really think through. There's been some really good USC wins. The 2017 game over USC was one of my favorite games because they just destroyed USC's. That's it. I have to think about that one, Anthony. I'm going to think about that one. So maybe hit me up on a super chat or ask me on the message board or something like that. But I'd think about that one. But those games that I just mentioned are ones that pop in my head. I don't really remember the Snow Bowl a ton, to be honest. I remember the finish, but I don't remember the game. Like, that was more of a great finish than it was a great game. It wasn't really a great game. The Miami game in 1990 was a really good one. That was the game where Rocket took that kickback. This Craig Erickson led Miami team. That one was in there. So yeah, there's been a lot, but to really think about what my 3 or 4, I have to really think about that one. That's a good question. I'd have to really think about that one. So yeah, it's a good question. I like those ones that sometimes I got to really think about before I can give an answer. So that's good. That's really good. Get back up here. Armada Perspective. Brian, what happened at Irish Sports Daily? You were working there and doing great, if I remember correctly. Thanks. I got a better opportunity. I got an opportunity that was far better for my family. It was just something that I couldn't pass up. It was an opportunity to go right for to me at the time, a more reputable place, a place that was going to be much better for me financially as a husband. And it was an opportunity to work with Lou. And there was no way I was going to pass that up. It was just everything about it was better. And it was a great opportunity for me. And of course, I've always appreciated that Mike Frank gave me a start, but it was up to bigger and better things. And it was always working towards this goal, which was to run my own site. And that's what I'm doing. And that's why I left BGI, was the opportunity to run my own site. And this is where it was always leading towards. So, but yeah, I worked very, very hard there. I thought I put out a lot of great content, which allowed me the opportunity to better myself and work at a better place. And then now I'm at an even better place. So thank you for asking. Yeah, you go back a long ways. If you remember me at ISD, that was quite a long time ago. Rob Didoff says, Brian and Vince, I'm calling 2 upsets tomorrow. And that is Michigan State loses to Purdue and North Carolina over Wake Forest. You know, Rob, as bad as I want to pick, I really want to pick Michigan State to lose to Purdue. And I would love it if it happened for a lot of reasons. I can't go there yet. And I hope I'm wrong. And my hope is that, number one, I'm hoping that Michigan State's really bad at defending the pass, and Purdue passes a lot. But Purdue hasn't scored over 30 points a game. They haven't scored over 28 points in a game since the second game of the year against UConn. I just don't think 27 points is going to be enough. That I could be wrong, but I'm hoping that the Michigan State cannot stop the pass, and Purdue's top 20 team throwing the football. So hopefully that's kind of enough to let them win the upset. Vince actually picked Purdue. And Vince also picked North Carolina. So Vince is with you on that one. I picked Wake Forest to win just because North Carolina's defense is so bad. But I hope that I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong on both of those. Oh, and by the way, I did come up with that ultimate cheering guide. I'm going to put that into the chat here, where basically the games and things that Notre Dame fans need to be pulling for and rooting for in this weekend's games, obviously. Tommy Gunn says, after Billy commits, can you get into more detail about his recruitment? Yes. Whenever he commits anywhere, I will get into more detail about that one. Absolutely. Demetrius Rex says, can we get a Lucky Lefty Irish Breakdown post-game reaction with all 4 of you guys giving your impressions? That would be amazing, even if I had to coordinate, if hard to coordinate. That's probably not going to happen. Malik and Sean have their own channel, and their show is going to help their business. And we are going to do the same thing. Where we are trying to work with them is I'm a believer that if there's more channels, people are not going to just stop listening to me to listen to that show and vice versa. If you like my show and you hear Sean or you hear Malik on it and you start listening to their show, you're going to listen to both of them. And so we've tried to help them, because we've been there, like starting off as a new platform and kind of doing all by yourself. And so Sean has helped us. And so we're trying to help Sean get that going. But it would, for them to come onto our show and do a post game with us, it would mean they're not getting the revenue from their channel. And then we would have to give them some of our revenue, which again, you start doing that and it starts making it a lot harder for us to be able to make the financial moves we need to make. And then they need the opportunity. That's a great opportunity for them too, to have that show, because that's where a lot of people are going to be looking to find you. And so they need that exposure. So we will always work together with them, but it's not in that capacity. And so, because when Sean comes on our show, he's not sacrificing going on his podcast to come on our show. They still do their show. To do a post-game show together, one of us would have to not do their post-game show. And doesn't make a lot of sense business-wise. And I wouldn't ask them to do that. And they're not going to ask me to do that. So I don't see that happening. Just listen to both of them. Obviously, listen to us live, and then they do theirs later. But yeah, they do a great job. I love this response. Nolan Esparza says, I'd pick running back because no way Kyron is letting anyone hit the ground. I love that. And you're quite right. Notre Dame 2164. Good to see you back again, buddy. So, fellas, it's Friday. I get off work in a few hours, and life is a blessing and a gift. Love my IB family and couldn't be prouder of how much this channel website has grown. Go Irish. Same here, and it's because of people like you. You're one of the OGs. You've been around here from the very beginning, as far as I can remember, and we appreciate that very, very much. Ed asks, don't know if anyone has already asked, but where are we with Anthony Lucas? Is he leaning to Bama? I don't know that he's leaning to Bama. I don't know if he's necessarily leaning anywhere. Some weeks it's Oregon, some weeks it's Miami, some weeks it's Bama, some weeks it's A&M. I think if anything, I'd probably lean more to A&M than I would Bama. And at times it's been Notre Dame, but right now Notre Dame is in a dogfight, and I would not put my money on them getting Anthony Lucas at this particular time. Connor Nepper says, Irish Breakdown, let's go. Let's take a look at possible future. Jalen Sneed, Josh Burnham, Drake Bowen, Jadarian Price, Nolan Ziegler, Keon Keeley, CJ Williams, Junior Tuihalamaka, Tobias Merriweather, etc. The list goes on. Beat Navy. Yeah, they're recruiting at a very high level right now. Very, very high level. You didn't, and you said all the recruits. I did not mention that we are getting close to getting. I mean, and who you didn't mention Eli Raridan, Olden Stace, Tyson Ford, Aiden Cabrera, Jaden Mickey, Devin Moore, Benjamin Morrison. They're recruiting at a very, very high level. Very high level. Craig Sebring says, I'm trying to go to the Las Vegas versus BYU. Love the Holy War. Yeah, so we will be there. I've already started talking to Blue Wire Pods, who we work with to do the advertising for our show. They have started a place where you can, like a studio for their home studios in Las Vegas. So we're hoping to do a show or two from there next year. But yeah, we definitely plan on going there. And a lot of people saying, so it looks like Drake Bowen is a shortstop. I just assumed he played outfield, but no, I'm incorrect. He is a shortstop. We got a couple super chats down here I want to get to. Chief Brody says the 2019 team versus 2021 team. Who do you think is better? 2021 season feels more like 2019 than 2017 or 15 to me. What do you think? I agree with you. I think, boy, it just depends on which part of that team we're talking about. There are certain parts of that team that are better. Certain parts of this team are better. I'd probably lean towards this team or the 2019 team because I feel like the 2019 team was just a little bit more explosive offensively. They were more aggressive. The line wasn't very good, but it was certainly better than this group. And yeah, I'd probably lean towards 2019, which was not a great team. And now I think this team has more upside than that team, but this team hasn't reached its upside, which has been the really frustrating part of it. I don't think this team has been coached in a couple areas as well as it needs to be. And that's been the frustrating thing. Jay Wiki Jr., it's a bad memory, but that Bush push game was so epic. That was a great game. A great, great game. Domer, Texas 22. I remember a year or two ago, Notre Dame's defensive staff was targeting longer, ragier corners with more upside, like Henderson, as opposed to getting more talented players. Safe to say this didn't work. No, I don't think that. I don't think that at all because I think they're still doing that. And I think just because a player doesn't work out doesn't mean that the overall philosophy didn't work. It just means you made bad decisions on specific players. Let's not forget that Cam Hart, someone that the defensive staff wanted back then. It's just the offensive staff won out on that one, but he's now there, right? And the best corner in that class ended up not enrolling. Landon Bartleson was the best corner in that class. And I did not like the Ramon Henderson pickup. I didn't like the Caleb Offord pickup. They ranked near the bottom of my list of prospects in that class. I don't think the philosophy was the problem as far as longer corners. The problem was those specific players should not have been targeted. And look, this is where Clark Lee was not anywhere close to Marcus Freeman. Clark Lee was a great coach. He was a very good fundamental coach. He was a very, very good defensive coordinator, but he was not a good recruiter. He was late to offer kids. It wasn't a grinder. He was always looking for these like project kids that they could turn into something. Some of them they did, but then you had too many Caleb Offords and too many Ramon Hendersons, in my opinion. The problem with Ramon Henderson isn't that he's long. The problem with Ramon Henderson has always been that he just wasn't a very good football player. And he didn't have the instincts to play the position. He's not Devin Moore. He's not Benjamin Morrison. He's not Ryan Barnes. Those are also really long players that I think are going to be very good because they're good players. So it's not the philosophy to me that's the problem. It was that they targeted the specific players they targeted weren't good enough. But the longer rangier corners, that's still the way to go. I mean, look what they did at Cincinnati. Ahmad Gardner, 6'2". That's what they want. I mean, that's a lot of the best corners in the game now are taller, longer corners. So I like the philosophy. You just got to pick the right guys. That's going to be the key. We have another one down here from Old Grim. Very happy. Thank you for your super chat, Old Grim. Very happy to be able to be here live today. Go Irish Breakdown. And we are very happy to have you, Old Grim. Very, very much. Chief Brody, or Tatted Up Irishman with the super chat. Thank you for that. Coach, my wife and I were going to go to the game. Now she is unable to. I would like to bring my grandfather, but walking a ton is an issue. Any tips? I would say that number one, bring a wheelchair. I did this with my grandmother when I took her to a game. It's really easy to maneuver around campus, in my opinion, with a chair if your grandfather's willing to do it. Again, I had to convince my grandma to do it because she's stubborn and independent. But it's a really flat campus. It's really easy to get up on sidewalks. It's really easy to get into the stadium. There may have to be some walking to get to your seat, as long as he's not just wheelchair, has to be in a wheelchair. There, it's more you need to get to the wheelchair accessible places, which are not, what I understand is they're not super easy to get to. But if he can do some walking, I would encourage you to try to go that route if you're able to. But other than that, I don't really have any tips beyond that. I wish I did, but I just haven't been in that situation for a Notre Dame game. I've done that with taking my grandmother to Cincinnati Reds games, and we've taken her to minor league baseball games around town and been able to do that. All right, let's get back up here to some more questions. Getting close to the end. And I think, okay, here we go. Timeout Tom, what's your worst Notre Dame game, whether it's a win or a loss? Mine is 1995 Army game when Notre Dame stopped them inside the 5 when time was running out in a 28-27 win. The worst Notre Dame game I've been a part of, it's a tie for 2. Number 1, Miami 28-17. Terrible. Just awful experience getting to the stadium. Awful game. Ruined what I think could have been a championship caliber season if they wouldn't have just lost the edge that they had going in. The other one was Michigan in 2019. And a part of it, the worst is because they got blown out. But the other part was just the environment. Michigan, it was cold. It was rainy. It was a miserable drive home afterwards. It was a pretty bad experience. So those to me are definitely mine. And Chief Brody agrees with me. But I'm going to wait here until I get another question because I am not ending on that topic. So if anybody has any more questions here before we get out of here, Jay Wiki says his worst was the bowl game where it was Notre Dame versus Ohio State, and they kept talking about how A.J. Hawk was dating Brady Quinn's sister. That was a horrible production of a game. And, of course, Notre Dame losing was not a lot of fun either. But, yeah, that was a pretty bad one. I'm going to try to get up to here, see if there's any – the USC No Moss game. Love that one. Love that. No, T-Mac, I love the fact that you're using that phrase is awesome. All right. Oh, I guess I missed some questions up here. So I guess we got a lot more. Okay. Yeah, we got a lot more questions. I guess I missed all these. Okay. So, yeah, we got a lot more of these questions. Okay. So I apologize. I thought I'd gone up and found all these. And so, yeah, we'll have a lot more here. Let me get down here. Okay, so we go. Here we go. Nolan Esparza says, say Freeman leaves, does recruiting return to status quo, or do you think he has set a new standard that other coaches will continue to follow? It depends on who they hire to replace him. I don't think that there – see, here's the thing you have to understand. There has to be a standard bearer. There has to be someone that holds people accountable to that standard. And what we have seen from Kelly is he doesn't hold people to that accountable to recruiting the way they need to because he's not as involved as he needs to. Part of the reason Kelly has been more involved in the last 11 months is because of Marcus Freeman. If he doesn't hire someone like Marcus Freeman, if Marcus Freeman leaves, then it's to a degree, it's going to go back to status quo. Some positions will recruit well, others won't. It just depends on who it is. You need to have that leadership at positions, but at the end of the day, that leadership needs to also be able to determine to hire and fire people. Tommy Rees needs to have the authority to go to Brian Kelly and say, hey, this needs a change or that needs a change, even from a personnel standpoint. And Kelly needs to allow him to do that. He didn't let Chet Long do that. Maybe he'll let Tommy Rees do that. And then Tommy Rees needs to be able to make some of those hard decisions himself to say, hey, look, this guy's not getting it done. We need to do something about it. But Marcus Freeman is the tone setter. He's the trend setter, but he also holds the rest of that staff accountable for the work that they do, and that's so important. And if he leaves, and hopefully he doesn't, but if he leaves, they need to make sure that they hire someone that's going to be doing the exact same way, doing the exact same things. Nate Wallace asked, do you think Buckner might get more playing time this week? I hope he does, because I hope it means that Notre Dame blows Navy out. I hope that's what it means. It's what it means. QKibs97, do you guys put a lot of value on Elite 11 rankings? Also, I'm overreacting that Angeli didn't even make the finals. Am I overreacting? I don't really care about Elite 11. And people say, well, but they've had winners that have been really good. You didn't need the Elite 11 to tell you that Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence were really, really good quarterbacks. It's just like star rankings. Like a star ranking, a 5-star ranking doesn't define you as a player. It just means that they identify what play. Like the ranking doesn't determine the talent. The talent should determine the ranking, but the ranking can be flawed. I don't care if a guy was an Elite 11 guy. There are certain types of athletes and certain types of quarterbacks that aren't going to thrive at an elite. Phil Dracovich's never going to be great in that setting. Some guys aren't going to be great in that setting. Other guys will be. I don't care. Am I overreacting that Angeli didn't even make the finals? I don't know. Like, to me, I never thought Angeli was a top quarterback. I don't have him as a top 15 quarterback nationally. So if I don't think he's a top 15 quarterback, I shouldn't be surprised that he's not at the Elite 11. So I guess it just depends on what your expectations were for Steve Angeli going in. I would have actually been surprised if he made the Elite 11. But at not making the Elite 11 doesn't mean that, okay, it confirms what I thought. He's not a good quarterback. They could just be missing the boat. I just don't put a lot of stock into that stuff. Plus, at the end of the day, I don't really care what a quarterback does in shirts and a T-shirt with no pass rush. I don't care. A lot of guys are accurate when they're throwing on air. Put some guys in their face where they're getting hit and tackled and those kind of things, and then we find out who really is a great quarterback or not. Because you could point to some Elite 11 guys that have turned out to be great, and I could point to some Elite 11 guys who were garbage. Ray Howley, who owns Bowen's scholarship, football or baseball? It would count towards football. Chief Brody, love the show as always, boys. Thank you very, very much. Tommy Guns, this is a good question. Let's say lightning strikes and the offense scores several times due to big plays during the first 15 script. Do you stay on script for the first 15 regardless of what happens? Usually you will. Usually you will continue to run your script until you're off of it. Now, the only time that would change is if circumstances in the game change. Usually if things are working well, because of the script, you're going to want to stay on it. If anything, look, I've been in games where we went through the first 15 and just shredded them. I'm trying to think, was it Duquesne? I think it was Duquesne once where we literally scored 3 times off our script. And so what we did is just ran it through again. I mean, just because they weren't adjusting to it. They were so outmatched. We just ran through it again. And it worked. Okay, so Ed said cold-blooded like the warmth, warm-blooded do better in cold. So he would be cold-blooded then, correct? Our fella who doesn't like to be in the cold. Craig Sebring says, coldest game I was ever at, 1989, Eagles versus Cardinals, Christmas Eve. Ooh, I'm assuming that was in Philly too. Yeah, that would be tough. Jeff Luke, do you have any articles ranking the 2003 defensive back recruits? No, I don't have anything ranking the 2023 recruits. I'm going to start breaking down Notre Dame's 2023 commits, getting those out. But that stuff will come after signing day for 2022. Once the 2022 class is in the books, I'll do more of the rankings and things like that for 2023. Jeff Perry, I've heard a couple of rumors regarding changes on the Irish staff. Are they true? If so, who goes? Is it possible that Harry Hiestand would come back if the O-line position was open? Number one, I mean, rumors are rumors until they happen. I am skeptical that Brian Kelly would have told anybody that he was going to fire coaches halfway through the season. I think any rumors came from probably other places. Now, those could be well-sourced places, and those could be people who have a say in making those decisions. But I just let the season play out. If the offensive line keeps playing the rest of the way it has the rest of the season, do I think Notre Dame needs to make a change on the offensive line? Yes. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens moving forward, right? You missed your opportunity, and you've had an average to bad O-line in 3 of your 4 seasons as a coach at offensive Notre Dame, and the recruiting has suffered, in my opinion. But that's not how Brian Kelly's going to see it. And so until that happens, I'm not putting a lot of stock in the rumors. Plus, I don't really like the idea of spending a lot of time talking about those rumors, because those rumors involve someone losing their job, someone having to go home to their wife, and in certain coach's decision, children, and saying, "Hey, daddy's got fired, or daddy's not going to work anymore. We got to go find a new place to go." That's not fun. And so I don't necessarily wish that. Part of my job is to say sometimes that's necessary, but it's not something I wish for. And I definitely don't want to kind of get into the rumor mill of this guy's gone, that guy's gone. I don't think that's fair to those coaches. And until we know that they're gone, to me, it seems like a fruitless endeavor. And the other part is Harry Hiestand's not coming back as a full-time coach at Notre Dame. I don't think Harry Hiestand's going to go be a full-time coach anywhere, but he's not coming back to Notre Dame. Him and Brian Kelly were not the best of friends. It's just, yeah, he's not coming back. Now, could he maybe come back as an analyst or in some kind of role to help? Maybe, but not as long as Jeff Quincy, O-line coach. And yeah, he's not coming back to Notre Dame. B Straw asks, any word on how Blake Fisher's feeling? Apparently his rehab's going fine. He's progressing well. I don't anticipate seeing him the rest of the year, but it hasn't been completely ruled out. Some people are saying he's out for the season. That has not been officially determined. Brian Kelly said he doesn't think he's going to be back, but he's left that window at least open to a degree. Michael Johnson says, glad to see the adjustments on the O-line and the tempo. If we play like that the last few weeks, the season will look very different. Yes, I think they'll keep winning. I think if they would have played like that early in the season, if that's what you're getting to, yeah, I think it'd be different. And that's why I'm so frustrated with why I didn't play this is what they should have been doing all year. I mean, I don't understand why it took them 6 weeks to figure something out that we knew for months. And it's frustrating. It comes down to stubbornness. People say, how could you know this? And it's stubbornness. But if you think something is working and you've had the success Brian Kelly's had, you're going to be a lot less open to change. And we've seen that throughout Brian Kelly's tenure. If he's not forced to change because of failure, he doesn't change. We've seen it time and time again. And that can happen sometimes when you have people who've had a lot of success in their life. They need to fail before they realize that what they're doing, because it's not like he said, hey, we're going to do this and it's going to totally bomb, it's going to suck. He thought he was doing the right thing, and he's just, some people are quicker to realize that, oh, that wasn't a smart decision. Brian Kelly, unfortunately, is just not one of those people. Sean Hunter says the year we played at Northwestern, maybe 2013, it was 2014. We had a blizzard a week before. That was the coldest game I was at. Yeah, that was really cold. Yeah, that was one of those ones where the sellout streak was extended because Notre Dame bought up a lot of tickets. There was a lot of empty seats in the stadium that day. Let's see here. Peyton says, this isn't super broad, but can you go in depth on your excitement levels about the next 2 years and the recruiting coming in, especially with the new 5-star linebacker we got the other day at night? Look, I think the recruiting on defense in the 22 and 23 classes is super exciting. And they got some kids in the 21 class that I'm excited about as well, that individual players. The secondary class was strong. Linebacker and D-line still came up short. Right, receiver or offensive recruiting was pretty good the last couple years at spots. I like the 22 class on offense. It needs to get better on the offensive line. Hopefully they can get Billy Schrouth and do that. They need to do better recruiting quarterbacks moving forward. I love Tyler Buckner, but they need to keep getting Tyler Buckner caliber players. Running back recruiting is a lot better. Tight end recruiting is a lot better. It's not a lot better. It continues to be good. They got to get offensive line back on track, but they're recruiting at a level now across the board, but especially on defense that we just haven't seen in a long time. And what we haven't seen is the back-to-back elite classes on defense. That's what they have a chance to do if they can finish in the 2023 class. And I believe that they will. I do believe that they will. Lucas Chapman says, I don't particularly love Kelly, but he's a great coach. He has his own moral compass, and that gains great respect with other coaches, I believe. Yeah, I'm not touching that one. I'll just say I think Brian Kelly's a really good coach. I think to be a great coach, you need to be a champion. And at Notre Dame, he's not done that. And a lot of the reasons why are his decisions. And so I can't go there. It's really good, but he's got to still do some things to make it great. And I'm not touching the second part of that one. Jay Wiki Jr., no lie, I had a dream. Notre Dame put up 70 on Navy. It's a sign. So therefore, I'm saying we put up 70. I hope you're right. I hope you are absolutely right. Timeout Tom says, in reference to schedule, how can the SEC teams get away with playing 3 soft out-of-conference games? Well, number one, I think that's excuse me. I think that's an unfair blanket statement. SEC teams don't always play 3 soft out-of-conference games. Alabama has usually done that. Alabama usually plays really soft non-conference games. They played Miami this year. Miami's not great. But Auburn played at Penn State this year. Auburn's a team that's always, in my opinion, played tough games out of conference. They played Oregon a couple years ago in a neutral field game. They played Washington in 2018 during a time when Washington was really good. They've played Clemson and homes. Auburn has always, in my opinion, been a team that's played good competition out of conference. LSU has done that. LSU this past year. Georgia's done that. And Georgia scheduled Notre Dame. Georgia scheduled Clemson. They've done that. LSU has played good non-conference games. I mean, the year that LSU won the national title, they played at Texas. I mean, you don't schedule Texas for a cakewalk. They played at UCLA this year. Last year, 2019, they played at Texas. As I said before, they played Miami the year before that. 2017, they played BYU, not a great schedule, and Syracuse, not a great schedule. So that's an exception. 2016, they played Wisconsin on Lambeau Field, got beat. That's a tough non-conference game. I think that LSU has been a team that's tried. They've played Wisconsin twice, by the way, in the last decade. TCU, a game against TCU back in 2013 when TCU was a really good football team in a program that was doing really well. Washington. So I think Oregon again. I think that, to me, Alabama is a little bit unique and Florida is unique. Florida is a team that, to me, has always kind of scheduled soft, and they've kind of relied on, we play Florida State, but they don't go above the Mason-Dixon line. They don't play tough games non-conference, in my opinion. But that's not an entire SEC thing. There's been a lot of SEC teams that will schedule out of conference. They will, and they haven't had a problem with that. So I think a lot of times the SEC gets a bad rap for they schedule non-conference because the premier team doesn't do that, Alabama. But I think a lot of teams in the SEC are more than willing to play good opponents. And again, if Georgia's afraid of playing good opponents, they wouldn't have scheduled Boise State when Mark Richt was here, and they wouldn't have scheduled Notre Dame. When they scheduled Notre Dame was pretty good, right? They weren't as good as they became, but they were pretty good. They've recently signed another agreement to play Clemson coming up here in a couple of years. So I think it's more of an Alabama problem than it is an SEC problem, in my opinion. Plus, the other counter argument to that is right now, the SEC is a way better conference than the ACC. So if you're playing in the SEC West, you're not going to play a lot of tough games non-conference. You don't have to build up your non-conference because you have to play the SEC West. You can't say that if you're in the ACC, in my opinion. You just can't. I think the only teams that can do that are like Florida State and Louisville because they got to play Clemson. But now this is one of those years where that game's not going to matter as much. We got a couple super chats down here I want to get to. Actually got a few of them. So Ed with his $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Ed. I appreciate that very, very much. Ben Elijah with a super chat. Thank you for that, Ben. Here's the real question. Since the NCAA has went through with the NIL deal, will Notre Dame allow EA Sports to include them in NCAA 2022? Please tell me you heard yes. I have no idea. I haven't asked anyone on that, but yeah. But I would imagine so, but I that's just a pure guess. Tommy Guns, warm-blooded creatures make their own body heat. Cold-blooded creatures need an external source. Thank you for the super chat. And I thought that was the case, but I wasn't sure. Jamel Chamberlain asked, the defensive recruiting took a huge jump. Is this just Coach Freeman, or is this something you can see continue even if we lose Coach Freeman? Hopefully we are seeing a paradigm shift in recruiting. It's a great question, Ben, Jamel, and I wanted to get to this because it is Coach Freeman from the standpoint of Marcus Freeman has just, and I'm going to write an article on this here in the next few days, but it's going to be called like Mythbusters, Notre Dame edition, right? And it gets down to that Marcus Freeman and his staff have basically destroyed the myth that you can't recruit elite players to Notre Dame and skill players and all that. And the reason why is because Marcus Freeman showed up and said, I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting that there aren't smart kids out there. You know why? Because he was that guy. Marcus Freeman was a top 100 guy who valued academics coming out of high school. He chose Ohio State, as he's explained, because he grew up in Ohio State and his dad that's where his dad wanted him to go. But it wasn't because he didn't value academics. There's a lot of kids out there, and I've hated this. I've hammered this time and time again. There's this notion that, well, great players don't want to go to class. That's nonsense, and it's never been true. And it's just you've got to be willing to fight those battles. You have to be persuasive. You have to have some charisma, and you have to work your butt off to get those kids. Well, Marcus Freeman has had no problem doing that. And he's challenged Brian Kelly to expand the staff in more of a modern way to get a guy like Chad Bowden on campus and get the offense to hire a guy like Dre Brown to help with recruiting because that's what's needed in today's era. Now, as far as can it continue when Marcus Freeman leaves, it can continue as long as the next coach comes in there and has the kind of engaging personality, works his butt off, and is willing to battle. What Marcus Freeman has done is he's once and for all put to death the myth that you can't recruit top athletes to Notre Dame. And you can't go into the South and get top players. You can't go into the Southwest or out West and beat USC for top players. You can't go into Ohio and beat Ohio State for top players. Marcus Freeman, along with Mike Elson and Mike Mickens, have proven that to be flat out an absolute myth. And that's dead. But that doesn't mean that the next coach that comes in isn't going to say, hey, the next coach may be like a Clark Lee. And if that's the case, then it's going to go back to the way it was. And that's all up to Brian Kelly. So. And then Matthew Edwards, periodic check-in to thank you guys for the great work. Cheers and go Irish. Thank you, Matthew, for that super chat. I appreciate you very, very much. And I thank you for the thank you. And this has been a lot of fun getting to where we're going. This has been a lot more of a fun ride, even than I imagined. And I thought it was going to be a lot of fun. Let's get back here. Andrew Goss, this show relit my passion for football. I love to hear that. Love to hear that very, very much. Let's get down here to some more questions. I'll make sure we get everybody. Jimmy James, where's the tailgate in Dublin going to be? I wasn't there for the last game, so I don't know, but we have plenty of time to figure that out. That's the fun thing. Dan Ferry asks, what's the nicest road stadium you've been to? You know what? I'd have to think about that one. Michigan's renovations were pretty good. Clemson's, to me, has a pretty cool road stadium. I don't know about nicest. It's not really the way that I had looked at it. I think, that's a good one. I have to really think about that one. Not USC. And the other thing, too, is Notre Dame plays in a lot of NFL stadiums. A lot of their home games are in NFL stadiums. But, yeah, I mean, Yeah, I have to think about that one. I think the ones I mentioned are ones that pop in my head, but I'm sure there's others that are like nice, like, oh wow, that's cool looking, it's clean. Like Michigan has done a lot of renovations, and it's a newer type of press box and all those type of things. So that's why I threw them in there. I hate dislike Michigan very much, but the stadiums, in my opinion, is much nicer. Yeah, D-Rock, I saw this thing about the Arizona State guy. I don't know what happened. I don't know what he said. I'm going to look into that, but that's why it's good to not be affiliated with the university and you kind of do your own thing, because if you start working for the university, you're not allowed to be critical. Like, let's say Notre Dame hired, partner with Irish Breakdown to provide analysis of the team. You think they're gonna continue that analysis if I'm being critical of play calling or saying Kelly did a bad job? Heck no. So I'm gonna have to look into that one. That was pretty interesting. I'm gonna try to find a couple more before we get out of here. T. Stewart, I think the Irish are better off in a New Year's Six game than the playoff this year. I just don't see the talent to win at all, and another embarrassing loss might hurt recruiting and commitments. I guess I just don't see, if they do what they need to do to get into the playoff, it means they've improved in the areas that they're not great at right now, and I think they can compete. And again, this is not your typical Georgia, Bama, Ohio State teams. They're just not. And Notre Dame should be able to play with those teams. But here's the other thing too, T, is it's not a guarantee you're going to get to a New Year's Six bowl and get a team that you are just going to be better than. Depending on what happens, like, look, if Alabama gets beat by Georgia or Auburn, you may get Alabama. I mean, depending on how it all shakes out. I mean, you just don't know. I don't know if it's a guarantee that you're going to get a team that's not going to be just as good as those playoff teams in the New Year's Six. So it's not like Notre Dame's going to get a New Year's Six bowl and just stomp whoever they play. Because if they were that good that they're just going to stomp whoever they're going to play in the New Year's Six bowl, then they're good enough to be a playoff team, in my opinion. So that's kind of why I've never really loved that. Scott, you're a big. Sorry if I asked this before. Would you be in favor of expanding the 14 playoff? So, Scott, I am. I'm going to put an article down here. I've actually done. So you're. I'm just. Let me find this. I did an article in a show this summer that talked about this subject. And so I'm going to put, I believe this is the one that I did that is the most updated, but I also did a podcast on it. I interviewed Bill Bender from USA Today. We talked about it, but I have a format that basically ties in the bowl games. And I just put in the super chat down below. The format I would use, I'd stay at 4. What I would do is I would make the bowl system tied in. I'd go back to the old bowl tie-ins to a degree. So you have your Rose Bowl, and you can make it to where if the Big Ten wants their own bowl, they can have their own bowl. If they want to stay in the Rose Bowl, they can stay in the Rose Bowl. But essentially, you've got the Rose, Orange, Sugar, Fiesta, Cotton, and Peach. And then you have each conference has their tie-in. So like for the purpose, the example that I used, I gave the Big Ten their own bowl. I gave them the Cotton Bowl. So the Pac-12 winner gets the Rose Bowl. The ACC winner gets the Orange Bowl. The Sugar Bowl is to the SEC winner. The Fiesta Bowl is to the Big 12 winner. The Cotton Bowl is to the Big 10 winner. And then the Peach Bowl goes to the best group of 5 team. And then after that, those 6 opponents are all determined by sort of the college football playoff ranking, right? So you get those matchups, and then you say, okay, you play those bowl games, and then from those bowl games, you've got your 4. And so what I think that does is that gives more teams an opportunity to be in the college football playoff without setting a certain 8 to 12 number, because it's not always a given that there's going to be 8 to 12 playoff teams. I mean, Notre Dame could be a number. Here's an example. People are thinking Notre Dame is going to be a top 7, 8 team, but they don't want them in the playoff because they don't think they can compete with those teams. Why? Because there's usually a pretty big difference between numbers 1 to 2 and then kind of 3 and 4. And then from after that, there's usually no more than 5, 6 at the most. But so what you've done is those 5 or 6 teams have a chance to go compete. So, for example, a year that I felt that there were a couple really good teams that had a chance to be playoff teams is you go back to 2018. And you had that was a year where you had Ohio State was 12-1. They were 6. And then you had 11-2 Georgia, who had lost a really close game to Alabama in the SEC title game that was ranked number 5. And a lot of people that year argued that Ohio State should be in. A lot of people argue that Georgia should be in. If you remember correctly that year, Georgia lost at LSU and then lost to Alabama. They had 2 losses, but a lot of people felt they were one of the 4 best teams. Well, the way that the matchups would have worked that year, and a lot of people didn't think Notre Dame was that good. You'd have had in the Rose Bowl, for example, Washington, who was number 9 against number 3 Notre Dame. You'd have had number 2 Clemson against number 11 LSU, number 1 Bama against number 12 Penn State, number 4 Oklahoma against number 10 Florida, number 6 Ohio State against number 5 Georgia, and then number 8 UCF against number 7 Michigan. So, and that was a year also a lot of people thought Michigan should have been in it. So you look at it and you say, okay, you've got your 4, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. Well, if you got to play those games that if they all win, then they're in, but they've earned it, right? But if Notre Dame gets upset by Washington or LSU knocks off Clemson or Penn State beats Bama, not happening, or Florida beats Oklahoma, because a lot of people didn't think that Oklahoma was that good that year. I think they were. The Kyler Murray team was pretty good. But you look at it and you say, okay, well, Georgia and Ohio State are going to play in that 5-6 game. Guess what Ohio State and Georgia fans are going to be doing? They're going to be watching the Rose Bowl hoping Notre Dame gets beat. They're going to watch the Orange Bowl hoping Clemson gets beat. Sugar Bowl with Alabama. It goes on and on and on. So what it does is it restores some of the greatness of the regular season, because now if you're a team going to the Rose Bowl, your time's the Rose Bowl, you don't really care as much about the playoff because you got to get to the Rose Bowl first. And so I think it restores that. It makes the bowls matter more, in my opinion. There's now 6 bowls that are going to impact the college football playoff potentially. And some of the matchups you see in these past years were great matchups. And every year, so in 2017, there's number 5 Ohio State against number 7 Auburn. Well, again, you just need one of those teams ranked ahead of you to get upset, and you've got your chance. Or you're number 5, the number 4 team, let's say, for example, in 2018, number 4 Oklahoma, who had a loss, goes and plays number 10 Florida. Let's say Oklahoma wins, but it's a really close, ugly game, but Ohio State plays Georgia, and Ohio State at number 6 just blows Georgia out, or vice versa. Now there's a chance in the bowl game to then leapfrog, but you're doing against another conference. So it's not like you're just playing in conference. I think that would be the best way. And then you pick your 4 from that. The committee would be the one slotting these games. And then like the lowest seed gets the highest seed gets the lowest of the 12, and then 2 and 11 is as much as you can fit depending on, who the conference winners are. I think that'd be the best way to go. And I think that would be just a ton of fun and would make a ton of money. I just don't think they have the foresight, in my opinion, to make that decision. Mule Skinner says, until I see the Irish dominate a good defense, I'm not sold on the O-line improvement. I look, you cannot be sold on it, but I can watch. You need to be able to break down film and say, hey, look, they're using their hands better. They're being more assignment correct. They're playing with better angles. That's not dependent upon a good team. You're either doing that or you're not, because they weren't doing those things against Toledo, and Toledo's not good. They weren't doing those things against Florida State, and Florida State's not good. They're doing things better. They have improved. What they are not is a great line or anything close to that. That's where I would disagree with people at this point in time. Let's get to a few more here before I get down to this. Trying to find some more here. Bronx ND fan with a good question. Do O-line recruits look at this coach and the performance this year and think they can make a difference, or run away and go to another school? Not running away. They're not impressed. Many aren't. And that started really before the season, to be completely honest with you. But yes, O-line recruits will look at the performance of this line, and it will factor in. It doesn't mean that they're still not going to come. They still may pick Notre Dame, but it does have a role at that position, more so than others. Jamel Chambers says Alabama scheduled Florida State when they were supposed to be good. They ended up not being good, but they did. And then Michigan in the last few years. Here's the difference, though. Those are rare. They played Michigan back in 2012. They played Florida State. That's a good one. But again, number one, those are all neutral field games. They don't play at places. LSU has. They played at LSU. They played on a neutral field, but against Wisconsin, but it was in Wisconsin. They've played, I'm trying to remember, they played at, Auburn's played at Clemson. Georgia's played at Notre Dame. They've played at Clemson. The last time that I remember Alabama playing a good non-conference game on the road was, I think, Penn State in 2011 when they were going through their stuff. That's a big difference than what those other teams are doing. And it's rare. I mean, other years, Alabama's, you can point to in the last decade, you can point to those two games, sure. But then I can also point to the fact that this year they played Miami. Miami hasn't been good in a while. 2019, they played Duke. Louisville the year before that. And when they scheduled them, there was clearly that Louisville team was not going to be a great team. They weren't going to have Lamar Jackson, obviously. 2017, they played Florida State. That was one where Florida State had been a good team in years prior. I don't think they could have known that Florida State was going to collapse the way that they did. The year before that, they played USC. USC had been a decent team, but again, neutral field game in Texas. Played Wisconsin the year before that. When you're Bama. West Virginia the year before that. Nope. Virginia Tech the year before that. Nope. I mean, they're just consistently Michigan the year before that. But hey, let's not forget too, when they scheduled Michigan wasn't exactly a juggernaut program, right? I mean, that was the Brady Hoke, Rich Rodriguez era. You know what I mean? So I don't know they had gone 11-2 the year before, but I think the game was scheduled before that. That was not a good Michigan era. So, you could point to the exception, but the exceptions don't define the rule. The rule has been Alabama, A, doesn't consistently play tough non-conference games, and B, they won't do it on the other team's home field. And usually when you play, you're playing in their backyard, not the other team's backyard. I have no respect for that. Let's get to a couple more here. We got Bob Sacamano. Let's go get a W. Have a great weekend, all. I think that's a great way to end this one. Ezekiel Robinson, big ups, another great podcast. Thanks. I think those two are great ways to end the show. So I appreciate everybody being a part of the show today. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate all y'all sticking around a lot later. Hey, listen, I still have 2 Navy tickets. So if anybody wants tickets to the Navy game this weekend, hit me up. Right. If you want to definitely get them, then you just go get I haven't had anybody do this yet, but just go sign up for a annual membership to irishbreakdown.com, and I'll shoot you an email and get you those tickets. But also just people who maybe if you already are an Irish Breakdown member and you'd like to get 2 tickets to the game and you email me first before somebody else signs up, I'll do that too. So just if anybody's looking for it, just let me know. I have those 2 tickets. It's the 2 that I bought for the game. So just let me know. All right. If someone's looking to go to the game, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. So that way, when we do a show, you'll be notified in advance that we're going to do the show. Check out the Irish Breakdown message board at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Look, we've grown enough to be able to hire people, but I want to hire more and more and more. I want to really grow this thing. And that requires people to really dive into what we're doing. So be a part of our message board. Come join us. You don't have to be a part of the message board like, hey, I don't post on the message board. But if you want to support us, we have a booster club option where you're just helping us out, right? There's people that have given us that, and they're not on the message board. They're just trying to help us grow. And we appreciate it. It's very much appreciated. And those type of things help us to continue to grow and make sure that you have a better product and you have better content. So I really appreciate it. So that's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow after the game. We'll have our post-game show. And then, of course, Sunday night, 8 o'clock, we will do our Upon Further review. So everybody have a great rest of your Friday. Enjoy the game tomorrow. We will talk to you tomorrow for our post-game show. Enjoy it. Hopefully the Irish get a W. We'll talk to you all again very soon.